Photography. Tonight we are joined by Louise Denton, all the way from Darwin, and I've been wanting to have Louise on the show for a long time, and so it's really great to have her on. I really love her work, and I love seeing all of the work from up in that part of the world. It's a spectacular part of the world, and I'm certainly keen to hear all about it tonight. And we've got Paul on the line as well. How are you going, Paul?
Good. I was just listening to Elise. She's putting a fan on in the room at the moment, and I was just trying to decide if I was going to use a hot water bottle for the show. So
Was it 36
we're
there and
bottom
probably about...
southeast to top northwest, and that's why it's called the top end.
Yeah.
Take your tops off. It's too hot.
Yeah, it's my thing's saying it's 10 degrees at the moment outside, so there you go. Enjoy.
10 degrees feels like 6.9.
All right, so I guess maybe you could we could start by you just telling us a bit about yourself, Louise, and maybe your background and why it is Darwin that you've I guess fallen in love with and stayed up there.
Yeah, sure. For those of you who have never been to Darwin and don't know who I am, my name's Louise, and I have lived in Darwin now for probably 11 years. I think this is the 11th year. I'm originally from the UK, so I basically travelled Australia as a backpacker, and came to Darwin a couple of times. And on the second time I came here, planning to go to Western Australia and Central Australia and doing all these other things, and ended up staying in Darwin because I just loved it so much. Ended up probably staying here for maybe 6 to 12 months before then continuing on with the rest of my travels. Ended up getting a bit of work here and saving a bit of money to then do Western Australia and down to Central, but came back to Darwin. It got me. I love it here. If anybody's ever been, it's very laid back lifestyle, outdoorsy, which is everything I sort of love. So I've been here 11 years now. 2008 I got here for the first time. So it goes quick.
Yeah, no doubt. And one of the things that you have gotten into there is having a market stall and selling your prints at the markets and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so when I first came to Darwin, I was obviously a backpacker. I was on a temporary visa. I couldn't get any long-term work, so I was just doing casual jobs here and there, short-term work. And in between doing that, I sort of got way more into photography than what I had been previously, partly because I wanted to show people at home and all my friends and family where I was and what I was doing. So I bought a proper camera and learned how to use it. So between those part-time jobs and casual jobs, I just threw myself well and truly into the travel and learning photography. And then with the market opportunities up here, it sort of lent itself really well to the situation I was in, because I could do 1 or 2 markets a week and then have a casual job or a part-time job on the side. When market season got slower or tourism season got slower, I could pick up other work, and it just worked really well like that for probably, let's say 3 years, I reckon I was working like that. I started the markets in 2011, was my first year at Mindil Markets. And then I went full-time photography in 2014. So by that point, I was sort of having longer-term pop-up shops, like rather than just market stalls with a gazebo and a few trestle tables. I was having longer-term galleries. I think the longest one I did was probably 10 months or probably close to 12 months. That sort of really kicked. And doing pop-ups like that really kicked off the ability to be able to do it full time, because obviously I've got recognition around Darwin for who I was and what I did. And then now I don't have any pop-ups at the moment, and I haven't really for the last 12 months or so, apart from a few weeks over Christmas. But it's something that I really want to use as a platform to the next sort of stage, I suppose, the next step into getting somewhere a bit more permanent.
I guess it's hard to read with the way the world is at the moment, whether it's a wise idea to do that anyway.
Exactly. I was actually about to sign a lease on a permanent gallery in the city.
Wow.
I was going to sign that in March, and I'm so glad I didn't. As much as I'm sad that wasn't going to happen, yeah, it's just going to have to be on the back burner, I think, for at least the next 12 months.
Yeah, that's right.
And just so other people know that the markets she's referring to, particularly the Mindil Markets anyway, they're actually world famous, and it's really quite a stunning marketplace. It's not just your average casual. It has a massive following and a huge culture around it, and it's really magnificently and really centrally situated. And I've glanced at Louise several times from the back end of her store without going up and saying good day over the years. So it's nice to drop a good day right now. Every time I'm in there, she's always talking to people and having a great time. So I didn't want to interrupt. Nice to get that roundabout way. But yeah, as far as markets go, I mean, how would you describe it, Louise? I think it's a pretty amazing one.
I love it. Like Mindil, it does get a lot of tourists, but it also gets a lot of locals. We've got a lot of handmade products and Northern Territory products. We've got all like local food. There's heaps of entertainment, and there's always something different every time as they try and encourage new small businesses with casual stalls coming in and out and trying it out. It's very
dynamic.
Dynamic, that's the word. Yes. It's yeah, and obviously we've got the sunset and the beach and the nice palm trees and the good environment that goes with it too. From a business side of things and a photography side of things, I love it just to be able to talk to, as you said, I'm always talking to people when I'm there. I just love it to be able to chat to everyone, and you hear different things about Darwin and about travelling in the top end and about photography, because obviously I speak to a lot of photographers, and it's, yeah, just a really good way to get to know A, how my work's perceived, but B, how Darwin and the top end is perceived as well.
And I guess you'd get to know which one of your prints or what works are sort of the ones that are more popular, and maybe help to also guide you in terms of what future things you want to photograph as well.
But I never get it right. So whenever I take a shot, I'm thinking, yeah, this is gonna be really good. Everyone's gonna love this one. It never sells, and no one ever likes it. The ones that I think, like I like it, but it's, it's not my favourite that I've ever taken. Everyone's like, yes, it's great. I get it.
It's always the way.
Every single time. So
I like that with competitions as well, where you put an entry in and you think, this would be the one that does it, and it's something else that ends up getting the gong. But yeah, no, that's but it's nice to have that direct feedback, and it's generally a lot more candid, I suppose, than what you would get online, where you generally get people sort of being a lot more positive than maybe they should be.
Yeah.
So do you have any horror stories of anyone that you've had come to the market, or is it generally pretty good?
It's generally pretty good.
Yeah.
I would say that at least once a night, sometimes more, I get people who want to show me their amazing photos that they take on. I get that a lot, but it's good, and I love seeing it. It's like the sunset just straight in front of what I've just seen with my own iPhone. Taking their iPhone and showing it me. I'm like, yeah, it's great. So that happens all the time, and usually it's fine, and I laugh it off and have a chat and whatever. Sometimes when I've got a tent full of people who are all trying to, give me stuff, and I'm trying to sell things because it is my full-time income, and they're trying to wave this amazing photo of their grandkids in my face. I'm like, oh yeah, it's great. So that's the hardest bit.
Trying to still be polite, but hey, I've got to earn some money here.
No, but usually it's pretty good. Horror stories, the only other ones are like rain at Mindil, obviously hanging a heap of frames and prints and paper in the rain doesn't go so well. So usually I'd say once a year we get one where it rains, and I sort of run around with tarps. I've got all these walls that I drop down. Everyone else is just terrified about themselves getting wet, so everyone runs into the nearest gazebo they can find. So I'm running around trying to protect everything and cover everything with the tarps, while there's about 7 to 10 people in a 3x3 metre space, which that's the challenge. But
do you hear the sunset clap from your tent?
No, I don't. I think that's only been happening for the last few years. I don't think that's been.
All the years I've been coming, it's quite consistent.
Yeah, no.
I was going to ask you how long it's been running. So basically, there's a very consistent, as Louise is attesting to, that the seasons are so different between there and here, and actually that's quite a good conversation that we'll get into, I'm sure, Louise, is how the seasons work up there.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of what you must have to navigate. There's such variety, but there's the sunset on the beach there is quite famous and really magnificent, and the gradation of colours is stunning, and it's just literally throw a stone from Louise's tent and you're standing there watching it. And for some reason, the tourists in particular have got into a rhythm of serenading the sunset by giving it a clap when the sun goes below the horizon. And I don't know what was going on at first. I was like, oh, is this some like act on or something? And I was like looking up and down the beach, just going, what's everyone clapping at? And then I just went, well, the sun went down. And then when I came back another night, did the same thing. And I went, so it's kind of like, well, why not? You know, like we don't spend enough time celebrating nature, and it's rare that people do it sort of deliberately and consciously like that. I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And yeah, I always love it when people celebrate beauty or celebrate those sort of things. So it's always a nice thing. I was also wondering, actually, in some line with what you're talking about the rain, how the prints hold up with the humidity and that kind of thing. It's certainly a very different environment there to what we used to down here in terms of the humidity.
Yeah, touch wood, I have never had an issue with any of my prints in terms of them being damaged by moisture.
Yeah.
It can happen more so with canvas prints and sometimes with normal sort of photographic papers, where you get mold. In canvas, you can get mold in it over a period of time. With prints under glass, you can sometimes get mold in the mat board and underneath the glass. Touch wood, as I said, that's never happened with mine. I do use slightly better materials in that they're all sort of acid free and neutral, like pH neutral. They're all my prints are all sealed, whether they're in packets or in the backs of the frames. They're all taped in and sealed in.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, as so far so good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is obviously an issue. I try and promote more so now aluminium prints or even acrylic as well. But I do aluminium prints because they are moisture waterproof. Like it can't get damaged with moisture. So it is something that we have to think about.
Aluminium can be easily damaged though from a physical standpoint though, so there's always a trade-off there, I guess. Frame prints could be too, so it's all relative.
Oh yeah, I've never damaged a frame. They're pretty sturdy, you'd be surprised.
Cool.
And with a lot of transportation and stuff, they're probably the sturdiest thing. Aluminium are durable and long lasting, but they are delicate, you're right. So in terms of like transporting, they can chip on the edges. So I've damaged a couple when I've been unpacking and smashed them off my gazebo roof when I've sort of misjudged things. But it's part of
isn't it?
Particular paper type do you print on generally, or do you mix it up, or?
It depends what I'm printing. So for my prints that I offer at the markets, which are sort of my bread and butter prints, I suppose, they're the ones that I keep heaps in stock of, and then people just sort of rummage through the prints and find which ones they like. So I keep hundreds in stock. They're all Fuji Color Crystal Archive paper, and then I use it for my bigger ones. I usually use Ilford papers, like a luster paper as well. And I have started to use a bit of cotton rag as well. But that's sort of as you know, it's a very different look. So it's a different set of prints that I'm sort of dealing with that.
Oh, cool. And you go, Paul.
Oh, well, depending on where we want to head to, but to me, to set the stage for the top end, as it were, to me, what defines it is these really unique and quite extreme seasonal shifts in the weather, and my understanding is they describe it as 6 seasons up there, not 4.
They do now.
And that might, because a lot of people, might not have been up there and don't really understand, how significant it is, that kind of lifestyle. I mean, it's kind of a funny thing as a Tasmanian to someone listening there saying it might rain once a year at the market. We would just be like, what the hell kind of place is this? And then, and the experience of living in Darwin through the build-up and people going half insane, and the level of storm activity you get through the wet season. It's up to you, Louise, how you want to sort of frame it, but that might be a nice way to just give a bigger picture of how it all works up there.
Yeah, and I do at some point want to talk about the weather and the climate, because it's a huge part of living up here. So why not? Why not now?
Yeah.
So I think as well, so the seasons define the tourism industry as well. So where are we now? October. So we're just coming into the wet season now. So we've had a period pretty much of 4 or 5 months of no rain, which is the dry season. And that's the coolest time of year.
And lots of fires, traditionally?
Lots of fires. So I'm going to say deliberate, but that's probably not the right word. The controlled burning is done by the government and national parks early on in the dry season, so just after the wet season when everything is still a bit moist, so the fires don't spread as quickly as they would do later on in the dry season. And then later on in the dry season, we get the wildfires and, the uncontrolled burns. So
my understanding is that, say, Kakadu is it's kind of owned / managed by the traditional owners, and they do a lot of that under their own traditional direction. Like, I remember going into Parks and Wildlife because I actually had a friend who was a ranger working there in Kakadu, and I was trying to dodge the fires to do some aerial work, and of course I was like, do you know what's happening tomorrow? He's got no idea, mate. The old fellas just do what they do, and we try and figure it out as we go along. And I was just like, because that just wouldn't happen down here. A lot of other places in Australia, and they have millennia of management skills just passed down from generation to generation to do it. But it was a bit of a thing as a photographer to try and juggle around, because I literally had no idea where fires were going to be lit and no way to find out. So for 4 or 5 months, the times that I've gone up there, and I've been up there a few times, fire's been a really big factor in the air quality and the visibility, particularly from an aerial perspective. And even though it's kind of a good time to be there to some extent, for other reasons, there's sort of each time I've gone there, there's a different kind of challenge, and it's evolved around the season and the weather.
I think the fires, it's easy to forget living up here how different our attitude is compared to down south, because I've had run-ins with tourists out in Kakadu when there's been a fire there, and they're running and fleeing and driving as quick as they can from the scene as I'm driving to it, because as a local living here, you know what is a risky fire and what isn't. It's not all fire is bad. A lot of it is controlled, as I said before. But through that dry season, there are fires pretty much for 3 or 4 months straight, I suppose, whether they're controlled or not controlled. And it is, from an aerial point of view, it would be really tricky. I've done a couple of flights as well on the same issue, that you have to go the opposite direction, or the visibility is just completely shot.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it. It's so ingrained in normality in the culture up there. That's the first thing that struck me. I was like, oh my God, I heard about these fires, and we were like, oh my God, what's it going to be like? And then I slowly started talking to people and realized, well, it's like that pretty much every day for about 4 or 5 months. It's the most normal thing in the world. It's just a matter of how much and how big and where they are at the time. And, like we would say, oh, what are the clouds doing today? Like, it's
which way
it's very normalized seasonally. And I've never been anywhere in the world where that's actually the case.
I've been here that long now, you just sort of forget, and it's just normal. And I do speak to actually a lot of people at the markets who are, if they come at the end of the dry season, sort of, I don't know, August, September, they're shocked at how burnt our landscape can be and how non-green it is. I think a lot of people sort of expect Darwin at the top end to be a bit like Cairns, a bit more like, North Queensland, a bit more tropical. So they sort of come here and don't realise that we're not like that. We're sort of more arid and more, savanna sort of country. But then as it gets closer to Darwin, we are a little bit more tropical, but we're still nowhere near the tropics of far north Queensland. So a lot of people are shocked at how dry and how burnt it is, and dusty and brown, and just everything gets covered in dust when you go anywhere.
So would you say you're in the build-up now?
Oh, well and truly, we've actually been.
Do you want to describe what that means to people? That's another very significant part that a lot of people run away from when it comes to living in Darwin.
It's probably between 6 and 8 week period, a transition period between the dry season and the wet season. So before it starts raining, the storm clouds and the weather builds up and up and up and up and up with no rain. You see the clouds, you think, oh yeah, it's going to rain, it's so hot, it's so steamy, it's so muggy, it's so humid, it's really hot, it's got to rain. It doesn't. That same cycle just sort of continues for a few weeks. Everyone goes a bit loopy and a bit crazy. We've been very lucky this year because we've had quite a bit of early rain already. We've smashed all of our October records, and I think the September records as well. So we've had a lot of rain already. And we did have a storm today. I was photographing it. It just didn't rain. It was just a storm cloud that just passed by and didn't come close enough. So that's basically the build-up, is just a period where everyone just gets very hot. I mean, it's 80 to 90% humidity today. It was 30, well, it was 40 degrees when I got in my car, but once we sort of got driving, I think it was 36. It's hot. Very hot.
Yeah, it's not for everyone, and there is a culture of just that, people just going a bit nuts.
Yeah.
It's like there's tension in the air. You're just waiting for it to rain, and it's just everything's pushing towards it, and it just doesn't happen. So it's like this flood kind of gate just being held, and it's this sort of no man's land of just craziness that seems to ripple through. But it's one thing to get a release or a relief from the rain from that kind of humidity. It's another when you're just held in that poised moment before. Where the air is just dripping water without even rain falling.
You get out of a cold shower, you don't put the hot tap on, you get out of a cold shower and you're instantly sweating again. It's just, the shower does nothing. So, I never forget actually the first, or one of the first wet seasons that I was in Darwin. It must have been the first one. And I was back in my backpacker days and I was out at a bar in town, and it must have been, I don't know, October or November. And it hadn't rained, and it rained while I was out on this night out at one of the bars in town, and everyone just runs out into the street. It's absolutely bucketing it down, like proper tropical shower, and it's the sort of rain where you're in it for 2 minutes and you're drenched from head to toe. Everyone just runs out into the street and dancing and just loving it. It's just, yeah, I never forget that, especially for, like, when you've not had any rain for 6 months and you get that, like that just sums up the feeling of what it's like.
6 months. Wow.
Well, I actually went to
in 6 days a year it doesn't rain. That'd be pretty unusual, I reckon.
Yeah, I was actually in Darwin. I think it was around this time last year. I can't quite remember when it was now. When was the tropical light on?
It launched at the start of the wet season, so it launched in October.
Yeah, sort of right at the end of the build-up, it was very dry anyway. I remember, and there wasn't much water in the water holes and that kind of thing. So I guess the timing is a factor. I guess if you're looking to go there for photography, you do want to make, especially if you want to photograph some of the waterfalls as well, just making sure that there's been a fair bit of rain.
Yeah, but I do think that every season that you pick has got something different about it, and it's just about knowing, there's benefits to any time of year. It's about knowing what those things are that you need to look for and what you're there to do.
Yeah, I often think the same, I guess with anywhere really, but certainly in Tassie as well. I always think you got to play the weather to its strengths and whatever. It's not wet here, but then that might mean that it's a better, more favourable time to maybe do aerial work or those sort of things. So there's always like you're saying, it's not nice to be optimistic or see the upside to things like that.
I think it's the same with everywhere. I think anywhere you live, you get to know a place and you sort of learn more and more about it. So with Darwin, it's just the more extreme end of it, I think. After the wet season, or during the wet season, obviously there's a lot of places that we can't access in terms of, flooding, road closures and all that sort of stuff. So it's just about picking, as you said, you can do aerial sort of stuff at that time of year, or just picking where you go and timing it right so that you get what you want to get in terms of access.
No, that's good. That's good. I actually had a question too, just talking about climate and things around camera gear as well, because obviously keeping cameras and lenses in that sort of environment is not the most conducive sort of environment to gear. Do you have to go through certain things just to make sure that it keeps okay?
I'm terrible. I do not look after my gear at all. A lot of photographers in Darwin will tell you that they've got dehumidifier. Are they even called that? Dehumidifier cabinet?
Like a dry cabinet, or
dry cabinet, I don't do any of that. I keep my camera in a hot car because you don't know when you're going to need it. So,
that might dry it out.
I'm terrible. So no, touch wood again. I've never had any issues with any fungus or mold or anything.
Oh wow!
I've heard a lot of stories, but I think this is my theory, but I think changing temperature, going from the heat and the humidity to air conditioning, to heat and humidity to air conditioning, condensation, that's my theory. I think that because I'm always at a constant temperature, I don't use aircon really, very rarely. It's always at a constant temperature. It's not going hot and cold.
So you don't have those fluctuations, and
that's
so the gear can acclimatise. Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense because that condensation inside the optics can't be a good thing for it.
There's a similar theory in cold climates, Louise, where you don't bring it inside in a warm place to then take it straight outside in the cold place. It works very similarly. So I think there is a lot of logic to that, Louise, apart from apart from something melting on the back of your seat.
Yeah, I don't think keeping my camera in the car is probably the best idea, but sometimes you just have to take it everywhere, and so happens that it's in the car for a little while.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I guess that's the thing. I personally get freaked out. Maybe I baby my gear too much, but I get freaked out with humid environments. And I remember I was on Christmas Island and very humid there, and yeah, just thinking, oh, am I ruining all my camera gear? But no, it held up fine. So I think it's, these days they design it because people have to use these cameras all around the world, so they're going to have to be able to put up with those conditions.
Yeah.
Louise, do you have a system that you use?
So I use Canon. I've got a 5DSR. I've had that for a couple of years.
Take that, low-key.
What?
I'm a Canon boy.
Also, Canon. Yeah.
Have you been considering the R5? No.
I've had mirrorless cameras before, not the Canon, but I just like a proper. I like the feel and how it handles better on a full frame, a proper DSLR.
Well, when I opened your mind, I've taken the jump. I've been using Canon for 20 years and 5DSRs for 4 or 5, and man, I would not look back.
Really?
Going to this. I waited. I didn't like the early mirrorless. I didn't like the lag. I didn't like the kind of tiny little quirky sort of feel of them. But I kind of waited till I felt like it was at a caliber that transition from, because I've used only DSLRs my whole career. And I'm super stoked with it. It empowers me to do other things as well that I didn't expect that I'd enjoy and get a lot out of. But I won't get into tech talk now on the show, but Nick will get pissed off and start waving Sony flags in the background, and
no, that's fine.
Nick will start chiming up with Nikon. But I would consider having another look. If you felt like making an investment, you might surprise you. The EVF is really real life. The lag is amazing. The file structure's way better than the 5DSR. The low light capacity is 10 times better than the 5DSR. So it's got a lot of functional changes. The autofocus is incredible.
Yeah.
The touch focus on the back is awesome for focus stacking and doing things really quickly. So I'm finding there's a lot of really strong ergonomic and hands-on practical reasons that it's a jump up.
And if you want to cook an egg, just switch it to 8K.
Yeah, there you go. I was waiting for something. I haven't even used video yet. I'm actually using mine right now to do this webcam.
Yeah.
Because I can actually plug it in through power and use it full time as a webcam to do this sort of stuff which is also another handy thing.
Yeah.
Heater at the moment.
What's that? You're a heater. What was that, Nick? Nick was chiming in with something. I wasn't sure if he was talking to his family or he was taking a jibe at Canon.
It was a jibe.
Oh, yeah. Do you have
Yeah, we can use
zooms or fixed focal length, or you have a big range, or?
My favourite is the 11-24, the Canon.
Oh wow!
Oh, I haven't even tried it. Tell us about it.
I love it. It's so sharp. If I could take it everywhere, I would, but it's heavy. It'd weigh close to a kilo. So if I do any bushwalking and off-track stuff, I can't take it. It's just too big. So my second sort of go-to is the 16-35 f4. That's mainly as well, I carry that when I do bushwalks and stuff, and that's the one lens that I take. I think that's mainly, it's a lot lighter. I can stitch panos from it, but also it takes all my filters, so it takes all my polarizer and everything.
It's still a very good, I used to own that lens. It's a beautiful lens.
It is.
It's a really good value point too, that one.
Compared to the 11-24 though, I just love the 11-24.
I recently got a 12-24, and having that extra width, it's only a couple mil, but it makes a massive difference in terms of field of view. So I certainly have been enjoying having that. Although the bulbous front elements and all of that takes a bit of getting used to, and the bigger filters and all that kind of thing, but there's always trade-offs with anything. So
and it's what you get used to, I think, as well. So now when I put the 16-35 on after using the 11-24, it feels like I'm zoomed into about 40 mil at the 16. It's just right to give me wider. No, it's good. That's my main two lenses for landscape stuff. I've got a couple of telephoto lenses, but I don't pull them out that often. 11-24 is the fave.
Awesome. Well, what we might do is get you to maybe share some of your pictures with us.
Yeah.
And very keen to see what you've got there, and maybe help us to understand some of the awesome places that you can see around Darwin as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. Somewhere in this evening, we could have a look at some sort of mapping if we just go online.
Oh, I might just do that first.
Yeah, maybe we'll start with that. Yeah,
just
it's a
give
good
people a
idea.
lay of the land so that
Yeah.
they can
Got
refer
it
back to where the
already
images are
up
from.
here. Hang on, I've just got to figure out how to share the screen again now.
Yeah.
Oh, should we? Oh, yeah. I've got.
There we go.
Hey!
Easy peasy. Good work.
That's my own little map there, but I might just go to Google Maps because I pulled that up too. So it's a bit easier.
So that's sort of the main, I guess.
Triangle.
Yeah, the most sort of iconic places, I guess, in the NT.
Which is what that other map is, my own map. That's the iconic sort of places that I go through. But I don't know how many people have even visited Darwin. I don't know if anybody really understands how big that area is. So I thought I'd just go to Google Maps and just get the full scale. Because it's huge. Like it's when you look at a map like this, it's hard to understand until you actually drive it.
What's the drive time from Darwin to Katherine? Just to give them a scale.
From Darwin to Katherine, it's just over 3 hours.
Yeah.
So Darwin to Katherine is 3 hours. So if you were to drive Darwin to Alice Springs, you can just about do it in a day, but it's probably a 12 to 13 hour drive.
Yeah.
I was actually in Uluru when COVID hit and they closed Uluru National Park. They basically kicked us out at about 5 o'clock that evening and said, you've got to go back home, basically. They were putting all the police checkpoints in, and it was getting a bit sort of full on. So I drove from Uluru back to Darwin in one day. So I left. I left with about 15 police checkpoints. I think I left Uluru at about 5 a.m. And then got back into Darwin at about 1 a.m. and I was fine up until I got to about Adelaide River, which is probably about an hour and a half from Darwin. And then that was probably 11 or 12 o'clock at night, and it started absolutely throwing it down. Like, it was raining. It was the middle of the night. I was obviously tired because I'd driven for however many hours straight. So yeah, you can do Uluru to Darwin in a day. Just don't recommend it.
Oh geez, that's like.
And Darwin to Jabiru, similar 3-ish hours.
Yeah, about 3 hours. Let's just zoom in a little bit.
I've done it a few times.
So yeah, the main sort of area of.
Are you on the Google map? Because it's you might have just shared the Photoshop window, and so all we can see is the Photoshop window on the screen share.
Oh, can you? I'll go back then.
Yeah, so might need to reshare it and just share your full desktop rather than just the Photoshop window.
It's funny when you first go to screen share, it gives you the option.
It does. Did it wrong. Okay,
that's all good.
Is that better?
There you go.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
You zoom out a bit. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, the main area where I want to talk about and where I sort of stomp around. So Darwin's up here. So basically the loop between Darwin, Kakadu and Katherine. So Darwin to Katherine, as I said, was 3 hours. Darwin at Jabiru is about 3 hours. So yeah, it's basically this, in a loop altogether, it's probably about 1,000 kilometre loop if you drive that. But yeah, it's basically where I sort of photograph. So from Darwin, you've got Kakadu over here, which is huge. People don't sort of realise what a massive national park Kakadu is. I think it's the second biggest in the world. I think it's the size of a small country, but and then you hear of people who try and do it in a day, and it's just you can't do it. So yeah, got Kakadu, and then that sort of flows into Nitmiluk National Park, which is accessed through Katherine. So this is all sealed, obviously, all these roads around here. So yeah, Nitmiluk National Park, which is also part of the Arnhem Land escarpment border, I guess. So everything over to the east of Kakadu and Nitmiluk is classed as Arnhem Land, and it's divided by a big ridge, basically. So that Nitmiluk National Park is also part of that ridge. And then if you sort of do a beeline back up to Darwin from Catherine. We've got Litchfield National Park as well, which is probably one of the most visited national parks from Darwin. It's easy to do in a day, and it's a lot of it's very easy access, very short walks.
And a lot of the locals spend a lot of time there too, because it is so easy access from Darwin, and a great place to swim and get wet.
The waterfalls are incredible as well.
Try not to get eaten.
Stunning waterfalls.
Yeah.
And great place, great swimming holes there. Yeah.
Yeah. It's been funny all year this year. It's been really quiet. Like usually you'd go to Litchfield in the middle of the dry season, which is our peak tourist season.
Packed.
Even if you go midweek, packed, absolutely packed. This year you can go on a Saturday or Sunday, and it's there's 1 or 2 people there, if anyone. Like it's been insane. Like
I often think
good time to take photographs.
It's also like these places are getting a chance to have a bit of a rest as well from all of the people that always trampling through. So probably not a long time in the grand scheme of things, but it's always nice.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Like Paul said too, it's an awesome time to photograph very popular locations, which without the volume of people there, which is like Coles Bay in Tassie is meant to be quite good. Well, I think we're letting people into Tassie as of Monday. So
I was going to ask that. Are you letting people in? So no, not yet.
Yep. So NT's open to Tassie as of Monday, and I think everywhere but New South Wales and Vic, I think. So and New South Wales probably not far off. So
crazy. Let me just.
Well, I think that the comment you made about Louise about the tail seal that's tail seal, and pretty much everything else around there is not.
So
a lot of people in terms of accessing a lot of the beautiful features of Kakadu in particular, I can't speak so much the other places. It's like you get your little 2-wheel drive putt, and you can get to some great things, but there's a lot of things you can't get to as well.
Yeah.
So it's a real 4-wheel drive mecca, and a lot of people and grey nomads and others that are a bit more organised and have the right equipment, they can really do some pretty amazing journeys and go to a lot of places. Like say, if you look at the highway to the north that runs from Darwin to Chabru, and you go into Kakadu, if you head north, there's all these beautiful places you can access all the way up to the coast in the north there that, depending on the season, obviously, because in the wet season, forget about it. But then on the eastern side of the road, a lot of the major falls you can't actually get to in a normal car, and the sort of southeast of the park as well.
Yeah.
And I know, because as a traveller, I came up that. Did I want to pay an extra $100 a day for a 4-wheel drive for a week, or did I want to suck it up and get what I could get? And that's a decision that often the travellers face, depending on the season.
Yeah, and again at the markets, I do get to hear everyone's feedback, and that's probably the most common thing that I get, is that a lot of people are disappointed when they get to Kakadu because they want to see all these places, and there's so many that they can't. Yes, there's a lot that they can, but I think it just comes down as well to knowing where to go. Like there is a lot that you can see on bitumen, but there's more that you can see on 4-wheel drive. But they're investing a lot of money in Kakadu over the next 10 years, so I think that a lot of those roads will be upgraded.
Okay, I didn't know that.
The draft master plan for Kakadu come out today, and they've already started building bridges over places like I can't remember the name of the creek. I think it's Cambodia Creek on the way to Gunlom, which is probably one of the most photographed or Instagrammed locations in Kakadu. So they're building a huge bridge, like millions and millions of dollars, over one of the main floodways there.
Wow.
So, they are realising that a lot of people are put off by the lack of access, and they are putting a lot of money into it. So we'll see over the next few years. If people, if access opens up a little bit more.
I have heard some of that negative sentiment, and I heard once someone call it Kakadon't rather than Kakadu. So, but I think that's overly harsh for sure. I mean, I went to Kakadu last year, and it's just the most incredible environment there, and especially like the Yellow Water cruise for me is always a highlight of visiting Darwin and of Kakadu and seeing the variety and amount of wildlife on that cruise, and the crocs as well, the size of those.
I do that regularly because every time you go out there you see something different, and depending on the season, sometimes you see more crocs, sometimes you see more birds, sometimes you see lilies, sometimes you see higher water, sometimes
and then it's different if you do it in the morning or the evenings, because I've done that both. I was there during Birding Week Australia, so So I was there with the top birders in the country leading
Yeah.
tours, and I went on some of them, and it just totally opened my eyes. And I guess if you're not used to a tropical area, what struck me about Kakadu is it's like life on steroids. When you get that much moisture and that much heat together, life just absolutely explodes, and it's like the whole place is just vibrating with this level of life that you're not really used to.
Yes.
And it was just absolutely stunning. The kind of everything that goes on there is just, there's just an extra level of everything, and you actually have to be quite conscious of that when you're driving. And people die regularly heading animals on the roads out there because there's huge water buffalo, and there's open range cattle on some of those roads, and there's hoppies everywhere, and it's kind of like, it's a bit of a wild place, and you can't just sort of drive whenever you feel like it. In fact, most rental companies won't let you or cover you or insure you after sunset to be on a road anywhere outside of a city.
Yeah, I don't drive at night, very rarely. So I'll drive back a short distance if I'm in Kakadu and I want to be somewhere for sunset, and then when I head back to the camp, and then I'm doing sort of 70 or 80 kilometers an hour. I've had not like near misses, but anytime that I've driven at night, you see donkeys, you see buffalo, you see horses, you see cows. I don't want to hit one of them. So
No,
it's
they're
sort
big.
of, I don't, very rarely do I drive at night, which is why I don't drive back.
If you and this can catch people out if you're planning a trip up there and you're not aware of that, and you're thinking, oh yeah, we'll drive there that night, or we'll spend the day there and then spend the night driving to the next spot. It's actually not an option.
No.
I mean, some of the locals kind of do it, but would not recommend it. And particularly if you're renting a vehicle, then you're asking for trouble.
Yeah.
I know from personal experience.
Yeah, it's I think it's just a lot of different things that you just don't realize, and I don't even think about it because it's just second nature to me now. But then speaking to people, and I was like, oh yeah, well I would never drive at night. Like, why would people think that that's a good thing to do? Yeah, it's and same with like gravel roads and stuff. If it's raining, like I'll stop and pull over and sort of, if I can, if it's feasible, to wait until it sort of stops raining. Because common sense, I think, sometimes when you're out in these places by yourself. And
I guess the other thing that a lot of folks that aren't familiar with that area would not always think about is crocodiles just coming out of anywhere and grabbing you as well. Is that that's something you've had to get used to when you're photographing near the coastline, or how cautious do you need to be in that space? Is it easy to read what the danger level is?
In terms of questions that I get asked at Mindil, this one comes up probably every night as well. Like, oh, what do you do about crocodiles? Can I swim here? I think it comes down to knowing the area and knowing where you are. If I just jump back to this other map, hang on. Do I have to stop sharing to go back to this?
You should be able to switch window if you've shared the desktop. Hopefully it'll just, you bring it.
I don't think I've done it right.
Okay. Just try and share the full desktop rather than the
It's usually on the top left.
Individual window.
I didn't do that before. Is that it now?
Yep, that's all good now.
Hey, so
Yep.
okay, now I can switch.
Now you can just do whatever you want. Whatever's on your screen is what we see.
I get it. Sorry.
Regardless of the program.
Crocodiles, in terms of, are they everywhere? Yes, but you have to sort of know where they are and where they're not. So people ask me all the time at Mindil, can you swim here? Around Darwin and around Darwin city area, I don't think in the dry season they've ever had any crocodile sightings on a local beach. It's more so in the wet season, they're moving around. The build-up time, they're looking for a mate, they're trying to get new territories, whatever they're doing. So wet season, I would never, if it was only crocodiles, I would never swim in the water in Darwin in the wet season because crocs are on the move. But we've got jellyfish anyway, so even if you were thinking the crocodile risk isn't that great.
Not just any jellyfish, the box jellyfish. Which...
Yeah, and Irrigangi as well.
Irrigangi, that's the one that freaks me out. Jeez.
Oh, what do they call it? Irriganti?
Irriganti. So box jellyfish, I think, are the worst sting, but you can see them because they're quite big and box-shaped. Irrigangi are tiny, like you can't see them, but they've got really long tentacles. So don't swim in the wet season. But yeah, crocodiles, I go out around Darwin at sunset and sunrise probably, I don't know, between 4 and 7 times a week, and I've seen in 10 years 1 crocodile. whilst I've been shooting. And that was a long way away. People
There's
pointed
probably
out.
plenty you might not have seen though, Louise.
That's it, yeah. So I don't, in the dry season in Darwin, the water tends to be pretty clear. So I will sort of wade into the water, probably, I don't know, knee deep or thigh deep if I feel the need. Wet season, it's a lot murkier, and all the sand and all the mud and everything stirred up from the bottom with storms and all the rest of it. So you can't see through the water. So I would keep further back probably than what I would do in the dry season. I've been bitten by crabs and nearly trodden on stingrays more frequently than what I've seen a crocodile. So around the city area, it's not really something that I'm concerned about. If I'm near a creek, that's probably where I would be the most concerned. So we've got two sort of creeks that run through the suburbs, and you see people swimming their dogs in there all the time, and you sort of just think, I don't know whether I'd be doing that, but people do. So
And how much I like their dog.
it's sort of it's all down to personal
risk levels.
Yeah, I don't swim around Darwin, but people do. Dry season, it would be perfectly safe, but yeah, it's not something that I like to do. When you get out of town, it's a completely different story. Basically, unless you know for sure that you are on top of a 30-foot high waterfall that a crocodile can't climb up, or if you know that there's a designated swimming sign, like, just don't go near the water. Like, it's as simple as that. Unless you know that there's no crocodiles in there for 100% sure, just don't go near the water. I do a lot of like multi-day bushwalking and stuff, and use a lot of topographic maps, so you can usually tell when you know the terrain that you're in. You can usually tell whether you're in a risky area or not. Basically, crocodiles can't climb, so anything that's got any sort of drop off, you know that you're safe. There are freshies up there, but they're fine. They're harmless.
Yeah. They're in all of the Litchfield pools and all of that, aren't they? The freshies would be pretty prevalent in any of the
any waterway.
Yeah.
Any waterway, there'll be
Yeah.
there'll be freshwater crocodiles in there. They did last year or the year before relocate a couple of the bigger freshies from Wongai Falls, which is one of the most popular swimming holes in Litchfield. Not because they're attacking people or anything like that, but because people like to get close to them. They like to try and get photos and videos and all the rest of it. They go up and try and, pat the crocodile, and then the crocodile doesn't like it and, spits the dummy.
Oh, look at this little beauty. Yeah.
So they have started.
Fully sick selfie, bro. Oh, good one, mate.
Basically what it is, I went to there's a place called Fog Dam, which is probably about an hour's drive from Darwin. It's like it's a failed dam, basically. They tried to grow rice there, but they've left it, and it grows lilies and heaps of wildlife, crocodiles. And you can drive along the old dam wall. And I was driving down there once. It says quite clearly, there's signposts everywhere, don't walk along the dam wall because there's a crocodile, like there's crocodiles here. And someone had gotten out of their car, there's a freshwater crocodile on the side of the road, like on the bank, and literally is taking a selfie with the crocodile. He's literally standing behind it, taking a selfie. I'm just like, it's just because it's a freshwater, doesn't mean it's going to like having its photo taken. So yeah, it's just common sense, I think, with crocodiles.
That's an amazing place too for the magpie geese, and it's the sunrise location, isn't it? From memory.
Fog Dam.
Yeah.
I like both. If you're after birds and a lot of bird life, then sunrise is heaps better. I do like sunset, and I like going there for storms a lot because it's almost a 360-degree view almost.
Wow, yeah.
And the best sort of floodplain view that you've got is straight towards the southeast, I guess. So that's sort of the perfect direction for where all the storms come. So I end up there at sunset quite a lot because our storms tend to be afternoon storms, and that location, Fog Dam, just faces the perfect direction for that time of day.
Right.
I'll just see if I can put my mouse on where it is, just about. So it's about here, I reckon.
Yep.
I don't know whether you can see that. But yeah, it's on the road to to Kakadu. So a lot of people do stop there on the way to Jabiru. But yeah, I go there a lot. Just leave Darwin at 4 a.m. and go there for sunrise and see what I can find. It's good spot.
Yeah, amazing.
Let's see some pictures.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, the anticipation's been building.
I need to backtrack because I was going to start with the Darwin sort of photos before we leave Darwin. I may as well start with the ones there. And I never sort of finished the seasons and talking about the climate and everything. I got distracted after the wet season.
Oh, it's okay. It's the way it rolls around here, whatever works.
May as well start with this one, so you can see that now, hey?
Yeah.
This is the one that you had as your cover sort of photo. So this is obviously a wet season photo. Just to clarify as well, a lot of people get confused about the seasons in Darwin and the rain. So, for example, people would come up to me and be like, "Oh, did you take that in the wet season?" You don't see any clouds at all in the dry season. So by the time sort of October, November is coming and you're starting to see these clouds, it gets very exciting. And I'm just like, I want to be out every opportunity that I can. To have cloudless skies for sort of 3 or 4 months. It's so this is wet season from pretty much right, and it couldn't be any more into the middle of Darwin CBD. This is the Darwin waterfront area and Stokesville Wharf, which is it's the main area in the middle of the city. So basically the city's all just behind me.
So Louise, my understanding is when you get to this kind of season, there's pretty much lightning storms every night, and people normally like clockwork at a certain time, and people just sit down on their chairs and watch the show. Is that an exaggeration, or is it a bit like that? Or
it is. It is a bit like that. There is storms somewhere every afternoon, pretty much. But I think a lot of people think that it's regular and it's going to come to you. And at this time of year, because the storms are all still building, they're very isolated. So you have to sort of chase after them. Like, it can be raining here at my house and it won't be raining a kilometre down the road. Like, you'll have lightning here, but in the city they're like, what, it's raining, there's a storm? Like, I'm only about 10 minutes from Darwin, CBD where I am. It's very, very isolated. So I think in terms of, are they everywhere, or, are there storms every night? Yes, there are, but I think it's about knowing your location, about where to go and where you've got the most views as to where you can see the storm, if that makes sense. So this is taken at the wharf, at Stokesville Wharf in the city, which has almost again got, I'd say probably a 270-degree view, and again looks straight to the direction of where all the storms are. So if you've got a storm that's 100 kilometres away in any direction, you've got a much bigger view from here. So if you were to sit here every night for a week, you would have a good chance of seeing storms, 90% of the time, because you've got such a wide view.
I'll give a shout out to Mr. Jordan Cantello, who's on here tonight. He's one of the premier storm chaser photographers in the country. So how you going there, buddy? So he was pretty excited. I think that was the first photo that came up with a storm shot.
We'll have to have Jordan on a show for sure down the track as well. We haven't forgotten.
Yeah, we haven't given up on you, Jordan. You let us know, buddy.
No, that's awesome.
Storms and lightning photos are just, I find them very frustrating because I end up in the wrong spot more times than I'm successful. So when I can make the right choice about where to be, and then you get results like this sort of thing, I get very excited about it. So sunset's always good. So this was taken at sunset, and obviously that's the light, the pastel sort of colours. Let me go to an.
So is that starting yet? Like, is that already starting, or just about to start? Or
we've had today?
November, December, pretty stormy, isn't it?
November and December are probably the best months for storms, if that's specifically what photography you wanted to come to Darwin to do. And it's probably better November and December before we get sort of monsoonal rain. So later on in the year, we can get periods where it rains for a week straight or 2 weeks straight, and you don't get this sort of lightning activity in those sort of storms. It's literally just rain. Late October, November, December is the best time for this sort of storm, which are isolated. You can travel around them. In terms of photography, it's a much better time. But everything still hasn't had its rain at that point. So in terms of other landscape photos like waterfalls or greenery, it's not the best time for that. It'd be better to wait later. We do get another sort of burst of lightning activity, or higher chance of lightning activity, towards the end of the wet season. They call them the knock 'em down storms. It's sort of just the last hurrah of the end of the wet season. So we have probably another month or so. So not so much the end of March, but more so April. is like the last big storms of the season. So that's another good time for chasing storms, but then you get the greenery and the waterfalls flowing as well. But then you don't get the access to those places that are a bit off the beaten track because everything's flooded. So if you come earlier, then you can get into those places still. It's all a bit of a balance, I think. If you come this sort of time, November, December, a lot of stuff's still open in terms of gravel roads and access. They haven't closed them off yet.
It sounds like a pretty dynamic time to come. It might be you just have to make the most of whatever conditions present themselves. I suppose.
And obviously with weather, you can't predict it. You try and predict it and you can't predict it. So you sort of just work with what you've got and just make the most of it. We have had a little bit of lightning already, but it's very early compared to normal. So today I was out and there was a big shelf cloud coming across our suburbs. Basically, I was on the way to the post office and luckily I had my camera in the car. I thought, I'll just go and have a look at this. And I was out in this field and there was lightning over the back of me. Like I should probably have been in the car. It was a little bit closer than what I would normally be. But they say the next week or two we're going to get a bit more lightning and rain. So fingers crossed. This one was actually from end of March. So one of the end of the season storms. And just to show you a completely contrasting photo. So that's sort of it's not always exactly like that, but that's more dry season sort of conditions. Literally just flat water. That's had obviously a long exposure on it, but it is always just really calm water, really turquoise. I was about to point with my hand then, but you can't see that. This sort of area here, this is all like bushfire smoke haze on the horizon. And then the sun's setting sort of over here, so light. So
you get a lot of pastel sort of colours a lot coming through. I guess you very vibrant sort of turquoise colours and that kind of thing, cyans.
Yeah, this is actually one of the oldest images that I have that I still sell, and everyone it's one of those photos that everyone just still likes after however many years. I think I took this in 2012 maybe. Right. But I think it's just the colour, like it just that colour is, everyone likes the turquoise. And then I guess I just wanted to share a couple from Mindil Beach, as soon as we've talked about Mindil Beach Markets. It's kind of the iconic Darwin spot. Get rid of that one. Sorry, I've only got JPEGs here as well. I don't have the full
that's all good.
PSD file. Or maybe we'll start with this one. So this is probably a scene that I suppose most people would think of when they think of Mindil Beach Markets. So basically this is exactly where the markets would be. So this is looking back out to the ocean and I'm standing taking the photograph about where the markets would be. So this is wet season though as well. This is probably, I think I took this in April this year. So just sort of at the end of all those clouds and dynamic sort of skies before we go back to just plain blue for the next 3 months or so.
Mm-hmm. I had a question actually about the shot with the lightning in it, and you're trying to, when you're capturing lightning, do you use any sort of lightning triggers or anything like that, or just like spray and pray, or just keep the shutter going?
It depends on what the storm's doing and what the conditions are. So with that particular photo, I did use a trigger, I think. I probably only use a lightning trigger maybe 10 to 20% of the time. I just find that it really has to be the right sweet spot for the shutter speed to be able to capture the lightning. So it tends to only be daytime up to probably 15 minutes before sunset or so that I would use the trigger. Maximum shutter speed, I guess, anything between sort of, for the trigger to work, it has to be sort of between maybe a quarter and a 30th of a second, I guess, give or take. Anything longer than, say half a second or so, I just use long exposures just with the remote. And then it's a lot of, I guess, watching the storm and trying to suss out when it's going to do its next strike. So if I'm watching a storm, obviously I'm watching where the lightning's coming, but I'm also a lot of the time sort of timing how many seconds it is between each bolt.
Yep.
So, you know, if it's only throwing lightning out every 5 minutes, I don't want to keep pressing the button for 10-second exposures if I don't think there's any point. I tend to sort of, count how many seconds it is roughly between each strike and then try and guess that way, I suppose. So you think, oh, well, there was one 30 seconds ago. Well, you know, I'll press it again now and hope that in that 10 seconds I get it.
Sounds like that's like all part of the fun, really. Like with the trigger, it's automated. You probably get it, but or maybe not if it's a bad one. But at least with the manual way, kind of like, yes, that's when I pressed it. So
I much prefer doing it that way, and I think using longer exposures as well. You capture the full bolt. So when you're using the trigger during the day, sometimes the trigger will just capture the end of the bolt or just the start of the bolt, and it won't get the full brightness. Whereas when it's lower light and you can use long shutter speeds, you know, you've got that full bolt in that 10 seconds. It's only a split second out of that. And obviously lower light gives you more contrast and more colour anyway than daytime lightning strikes. They tend to sometimes get a bit washed out, and it's just hard to see.
I can imagine daytime would be very challenging to capture.
Yeah, well, yeah, I've got a few, but it is a lot harder, and it's much nicer, obviously, when you've got a bit of colour and better light. So
yeah, for sure. Oh, there you go.
So I've got 2 lightning triggers, but the one that I use now is actually called Lightning Trigger. It's from a website called lightningtrigger.com.
That's well named. Straight to the point.
Oh, it's just, and it's so good. Like I've used 2 or 3 different triggers, and sometimes you find that they just fire it too much and then your camera times out and you miss the bolt that actually happens, and some of those they just don't fire at all, and it's this one's really good that I've got now, so it's not cheap though. But so that's that with lightning.
Thank you.
That's all right. It's sidetracked. So that's Sunset Mindil Beach there, and then this is sort of Mindil Beach as well. And I think I wanted to just sort of say that I think photographing beaches in the top end, it's very different to a lot of stereotypical Australian beaches. We don't really have surf for a start. We don't often have sand, like this is mud that's in this photo. We do have sand, obviously, but we do also have a lot of mud and a lot of mangroves, and it's not the stereotypical amazing beach location. I think you have to look a bit differently when you're sort of at Darwin. So if you were walking to this beach now as a tourist or a visitor, you wouldn't see that light, and you wouldn't see you might see the shapes, but it's more so just you would see a lot of mud, a lot of low tide. It's not, sometimes it's not as pretty as what people expect from an Australian beach. So I kind of just wanted to show a few beachy ones as to how we can, we have got beautiful beaches up here. You just have to look at them a little bit differently.
I guess that's part of the challenge too, isn't it? To find the angles that make it work, and there's always beautiful perspective on most things. It's just trying to find how to put it all together.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the thing that when I've spoken to other photographers who come to Darwin, a lot of people, especially during the dry season, they really struggle with how harsh our light can be. Like it's literally just, even though it might be an hour before sunset, it's still like it's midday, well, not quite midday, but it's still very strong daylight and harsh shadows. Like it's a lot of people they struggle with the light side of things, I think. Just see what other beachy ones I put in this little set.
It's a shorter window to get that soft light for sure.
Yeah, although saying that, I do think that if you've got the right conditions, more so wet season when we've got a bit of cloud, I think our sunset colours tend to last a bit longer than what other places do. And I think that, I don't know whether this is, well, my theory is just that it's that we're closer to the equator, and I don't know why, it just seems to last so much longer. Like sometimes our colour can last for sort of 30, 40 minutes, whereas when I've been in other places that are either Northern Hemisphere or further away from the horizon, it's just like a go blink and then it just seems to be done. Maybe I've just picked the wrong times. But
no, it certainly doesn't last that long down this way, but there's got to be some sort of meteorological or geographical explanation for sure.
Yeah, I just I love shooting after sunset because that light is so harsh before sunset. If anybody's been to Darwin, I don't know whether you guys would know actually, this is Nightcliff Jetty. I don't know if anyone's ever been there, but this is probably one of the most photographed local spots that we've got. It's the only jetty in the Darwin area. And yeah, it's very popular with photographers and people watching the sunset. So just wanted to share that. It's our only jetty.
Is that near Mindil area?
It's north of Mindil. It's probably
Okay.
a 10-minute drive, I would
Okay.
guess. Yeah, it's really nice though. There's parks and food, like takeaway vans and stuff. It's
wow.
a popular
Good vibe.
sunset spot. And then I've got one more storm one here, which is from very close to where that jetty is.
Oh, cool.
So this is a daytime shot. So I suppose that lightning there sort of highlights, I think, about the trigger maybe not capturing as much brightness maybe as what it would do if it was later
Yeah.
light.
Yeah, I guess that's because you've got so much brightness in the scene already, and the lightning, it gets, there's not as much dynamic range as you would have later in the evening. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've probably got a graduated filter on there as well, because I do sometimes put graduated neutral density on there just to darken down the sky to help with the lightning. But yeah, that was with the trigger.
Do you have any specific filters you use? Like any
I use Lee filters with the 16 to 35. With the 11 to 24, I did buy a Nissi filter with the huge, massive filter hole.
180mm system.
11 to 24. Sorry?
It's 180mm filters.
Yeah, it is 180 mil.
180? Oh my lord!
It's massive.
It's a
And
window pane.
Oh,
I just find I don't use it because I just can't be bothered to carry it. Like, it's just such a pain to carry with me. So I've been, more so than using filters, I've been just merging two images together manually, like blending them later in Photoshop.
There's one thing you could look into is actually rear filters as well. You can get a rear filter kit for those and convert it. You won't be able to get a grad, but you could still get long exposures, which is quite handy.
Yeah, especially for lightning, with lightning triggers. I've never done it, but I have heard that people will put like a lead big stopper or a 10-stop ND filter on with the lightning trigger so that they can capture more of the
Right.
the bolt.
Okay.
But I haven't done that myself yet. The main thing I think so when you're looking for lightning, you've generally got more dramatic cloud structure, like you've got those big bubbly mushroom clouds that are associated with the storms. The longer exposure you use, the more blurry your clouds are going to be. So I tend to prefer to keep my shutter speeds under 5 or 10 seconds because I want to keep that cloud sharp.
Yeah, it's a bit like that with auroras and things like that too. You go too long and you lose all the detail, so it's a bit of a balancing act to work out the best sort of shutter speeds there. I was also wondering with the storm stuff, have you ever looked at doing any time lapse or anything like that?
I've thought about it, but I've only got one camera, so I kind of want to. I'd need to get a second system, I think, because I'd still want to be able to capture the stills and do my own thing whilst the time lapse would be running, I guess. Because
It's it's hard to keep. It's like juggling a whole bunch of balls at the same time. It's never that fun. It's not nice just to be able to focus on one thing and do that properly. But yeah, you can imagine with some of those amazing cloud structures and all that lightning, you could get some pretty awesome time lapses too.
Yeah, I agree. One day, stay tuned. Give it a go. Maybe this season.
Because there's is it Micah Blinsky or there's a few guys from the States that just do the most incredible storm time lapse films. It's really astounding to watch. Yeah.
I didn't see that. I have to keep my eyes open. All right, so I've got a few from, I don't know where to go first. I've got a few from Kakadu that I was going to share as well. Oops, wrong button.
Just as you're doing that, can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
yeah, mate.
Loud and clear.
Yay, I'm really sorry. I've had massive bandwidth problems, so I haven't been joining in, but I think they're a little bit resolved now. I'm keen to hear, Louise, about the more inland areas and some of the really nice vegetation and other sort of features, I guess, anthills and that sort of thing that you get up in the top end and your sort of favourite little detail things that you might like to shoot when you're away from the big storms.
Yeah, I think obviously living in Darwin, it's easy for me to. Darwin's small, it's a 15-minute drive, and you've covered the whole of the suburbs and the beaches that we've got accessible, really. So I spend a lot of time in Darwin, so it's easy to sort of create new stuff around there. But yeah, as you say, and as a lot of visitors say, they don't associate Darwin with beaches and good coastal photography. It's all about the outback and Kakadu and that dramatic sort of sandstone country, I guess, that I've got it behind me and in front of me now. This is one of my favourite images.
That's incredible.
That I've done from Kakadu recently. I don't know where to start, but I think mainly it's the story that goes with it and why it's sort of special to me, and that sort of adds to my emotional connection, I think, to the photo. In terms of the actual photo, I think it just summarises exactly what Kakadu is. Though it's the iconic sort of sandstone escarpment country that you see all the way through Kakadu. Like, as I said before, the Arnhem Land border is the edge of Kakadu, so you're constantly, greeted with these great big walls of rock when you're driving to different places. This is obviously taken in the wet season with that sky and the rainbow, and this creek doesn't flow all year. So this was taken in January last year, I think. And yeah, this creek, you can't visit this place all the time and see this same scene. Like, it's only sort of 3 or 4 months of the year that it flows. And this was taken on a 4-day bushwalk, I think it was, that I did with the Darwin Bushwalking Club. So if anybody knows Gabara, it's upstream of a place called Gabara in Kakadu. It's not very regularly visited, and if it is visited, the location Gabara, it's only really a wet season sort of spot. As I said, it doesn't flow in the dry season, so you'd go there and see an empty creek bed in the dry season. But yeah, so this was taken, I think, probably on day 3 of the hike. And I've taken this photo at sunrise, and I'm literally just standing outside my tent. I didn't go too far for it. But the reason that I think it's so memorable for me is that, so to start with, we had to cross the creek downstream, which was like, we found a fallen tree, but that was a huge ordeal for me because I have the balance of somebody that's not very balanced. So I'm trying to get across this log with all my camera gear and obviously my tent and all my camping gear and everything was a nightmare, and everyone was laughing at me because I couldn't get across the log. Anyway, when we finally got across and we sort of walked upstream for a couple of days, set up camp here at this spot, sitting around having dinner next to the creek, and we can see lightning in the distance. Thinking, is it going to rain here? Don't know. It's that time of year where everything could just be isolated. It could be going any direction. So we're just watching the lightning, having a great old time, and decided that we were going to go to bed at sort of 9 o'clock, and starts thundering and raining over the top of us. When I found out that my tent didn't really work as a tent. It was leaking. So and obviously I've got all the camera gear and stuff in there. And when I'm walking in the wet season, I always carry heaps of dry bags. So all my camera gear is in dry bag within dry bag. I don't care about the sleeping bag and my clothes and everything. It's just the camera gear I'm trying to protect. Anyway, tent's leaking. I may as well just be lying in the rain. So I went up to like a little rocky outcrop to hide out for a couple of hours and had a bit of a snooze up there. Headed back down to go to sleep, and then sunrise, woke up the next morning to that, and I was like, I'd had about 2 hours sleep, and I just sort of stumbled out of the tent and I could just see this orange glow, and got out and managed to snap that before it sort of faded into nothing, because it literally, I think I took maybe 2 or 3 photos and it was gone.
Wow.
It's just one of those photos that's just stuck with me, mainly for the experience, but then also for the fact that you've put yourself through this. You've spent 4 days soaking wet and everything's going mouldy, but at least I got a photo out of it.
Oh, that's what it's all about, isn't it? The reward for effort. It's a sweet thing, that's for sure.
Yeah, so that's
beautiful shot.
And I wouldn't even really know where it was if I wanted to go back to the same spot. It's just one of those once in a lifetime things where we just happened to camp at that spot and we liked it, and one of my favourites. And then I'll go to this. This is the only other Kakadu one I've got.
So you do a fair bit of hiking to get to some of those spots, or that was more of a like you try to do a hike every so often, or?
I'd be out there every week if I could be, but running the business side of things takes a lot more time sometimes than what I'd like.
Tell me
And
about it.
weekends, yeah, and weekends in, like, because I sell my work in person, weekends in retail, like I have to work weekends. So a lot of the time when I've got people that can go with me, like I can't go. So it's yeah. So I think this year I've probably only done maybe 4 or 5 multi-day hikes. Last year I did a few more. I'd probably, on average, on a normal year, I'd get away maybe once a month, whether that be for 2 days or 7 days. Like,
Oh, that's right. You we recently chatted about, before COVID anyway, you're doing Larapinta, but yeah, but that's yeah, I'm very, very keen to see how you go on that, because that's just the most
I'm
incredible
hoping
place.
to do it next year, yeah. So I was thinking maybe I'd try and get down there October this year and do it, but just work stuff's got sort of too much. I can't make the time now. But yeah, next April I'm hoping to hike Larapinta. So
It's one of the most underrated places I've ever been. I think it's just, yeah, everyone should make an effort to do that walk if they can, or at least a small part of it.
yeah, and that's the beauty of it. You can do small parts.
Yeah, that's it. Just talking about the business stuff, we did have a question a little while back about if COVID affected your business all that much. I'm assuming that there would have been some impact.
Yeah, it did. So when it was the end of March, wasn't it? Was the main sort of end of March, April was the main lockdown period. So I was travelling and about to hike Larapinta at that time. So that was the first, major effect of COVID for me, was that all those trip plans that I'd done, all those shoots that I was going to do, just went out the window and I just drove straight home. And then in terms of Darwin and COVID after that, we didn't really have a lockdown here as such. We didn't have any community transmission of COVID in Darwin at all. We had, I'm going to guess, about 30 cases, but they were all isolated cases that were people coming back from overseas or interstate. So yeah, we never had like a lockdown. We did have restrictions on events though. So in terms of me and my business, Mindil wasn't allowed to start. So we usually start Mindil Markets in late April, but we didn't start till nearly the end of June this year. And then it was only once a week rather than twice a week. I also do a lot of different like craft fairs and events where I have my stall, and I also do pop-ups in our local shopping centre, which was pretty much closed. So I'd say for normally tourist season for us would kick off maybe May, but it was 3 months behind really, and it didn't get back to normal. We were still probably only at about 50% of what we would normally be. So I saw this coming basically, and I still have a mortgage to pay, so I sort of needed to cut down business costs pretty quick, knowing that I wasn't really going to be making a full income. So I had a commercial premises which I rented, and I've rented it for probably 5 years, I'd say. So I had to give that up just to try and cut costs. So I'm now working from home, which is feels like a huge backward step. So that's probably the biggest changes that I've made. I used to have a commercial place and work in a workshop in our sort of industrial area. I had like it was probably an 80 square metre space, so it wasn't a small space, which I've now all got in my house, which, as you can imagine, is not ideal. But I'm really glad I did that. Like, in terms of cutting costs, like, I'm quite lucky in that my actual income has dropped, obviously, but not by as disastrous an amount it would have been if I hadn't have given up that huge financial outlay of paying rent. So I've sort of, just riding the storm, I guess, just sort of plateaued. It's not, the business isn't growing. It's not going to be a bumper year, but, I've still got a house. So I'm not in a bad situation as many, many, many people are. Like, it's, so I've definitely been affected, and tourism in Darwin as a whole and Northern Territory has, I would say, been hugely affected, mainly tourism businesses. But yeah, it's not as bad as what it has been in other places, for sure.
Well, that's I guess it's always nice to look at the better side of things, and it is fortunate that that it didn't impact too hard. I know that they were quite worried about the NT in particular because of the large distances that people have to travel for health treatment and things. So it's really fortunate that it hasn't taken off there, and hopefully continues to stay that way too.
Yeah, I hope so. Time will tell. I don't think tourism as a whole for Australia or Northern Territory is gonna get any better over the next 6 to 12 months. It's the whole sort of global economy is going to have a bit of a hard time, but just got to ride it out, I guess. And
Yeah, we're all in it together when it comes to that. So, and I certainly always feel so much more for the folks in Melbourne as well who've really drawn the short straw with all of that too.
Yeah, they've had pretty much a 4 or 5 month constant lockdown, I think, haven't they?
Yeah, it's a real challenge.
Yeah.
We also had another question as well around if any of the creeks or rivers have water holes in the dry season, and if there is there any wildlife in those pools at all?
It's a two-part thing. So are there any creeks and pools around in the dry season? Yes, but it's very like you have to know where to go. Like a lot of places will dry up, a lot of places don't dry up. So Litchfield National Park, for example, a lot of that's spring-fed, so they flow all year round. All those creeks and waterfalls. A couple of them, actually, no, I don't think any of the ones that are accessible dry up. If you do any sort of hiking, like multi-day hiking, there's a track in Litchfield called the Tabletop Track. A couple of those right up on the tabletop, they would dry up, but the majority of the main waterfalls and main attractions flow all year. But then again,
just jumping in a tiny bit, like that's actually one of the things that birders look for, because when it dries up, there's a focal point for a lot of the bird life, and there's incredible density, and if you know where to go with those specific places, the likelihood of getting a whole range of species is really high. Is it?
Yeah,
that's my understanding.
Yeah, that's true. So in places like Kakadu, like you mentioned before, Yellowwater, Billabong, and you were there in Bird Week, which is about now, I think it's late October. Because we haven't had, in a typical year, we won't have had much rain by this point. So somewhere like Yellowwater and all the floodplains around there are the last sort of haven and area of reliable water. So it does get a concentration of bird life and other wildlife. So I think that applies maybe not so much in somewhere like Litchfield, which is, there's a lot of water in Litchfield because a lot of it's spring-fed. Somewhere more arid like Kakadu or Catherine, you have to know where the water is. The birds and the wildlife know where the water is. So it's, yes, there are areas where there's pools left. It's just you have to know where they are. And if you can find them late dry season, then wildlife, especially bird life, is more prevalent there, I guess, more concentrated.
Just as a follow-on from that, Louise, and talking about the bushwalking that you did with this beautiful image that you captured before, with such contrasting seasons, what considerations are there for multi-day bushwalking? I guess water is a big one. Its availability in the wet as opposed to its availability in the dry, and can you drink straight from the creeks in the wet season, or do you need to be purifying or that sort of thing?
So most of the bushwalks that I do, and that a lot of people, I would say 90% of bushwalkers in the top end would be a similar sort of stance. You want to have water wherever you go because A, it's nice to have a swim at the end of the day when it's 30 degrees, but also because you need to be drinking 3 to 5 litres a day, if not more. Like wet season, when I'm working around the house and pottering in the garden, I could easily drink 6 or 7 litres of water a day. Like you have to plan your walks around water. And regarding drinking straight out, yes, like even in the dry season, I drink straight out. There's been a couple of sketchy pools that I've filled up with late in the dry season, but I just boil it for 10 minutes. Or I do carry water purification tablets as well for emergency use, but I'd never use them. 90% of the time you can find water in the top end, usually on the bushwalks that I've planned.
Cool.
And do you, like, I guess the
alien.
what was that, Nick?
I missed that.
I was just saying, it's such a foreign and alien sort of concept, the top end, compared to what we've got down here in Tasmania. So I'm very curious, and we're all avid bushwalkers, us three, and a lot of our viewers, and love to get up there and do some walks, but I don't know if I can take on the amount of water drinking and heat.
Oh,
Yeah, the heat's a big one. You really have to be used to it. And if I haven't been out for a few weeks and it's build up time or wet season time, you really do feel it hit you. You just have to take it a bit slower. But I don't think I wouldn't be very good hiking in the cold. I'd be terrible.
That's the best.
Give me the sweat.
Yeah. You don't even sweat. You just keep walking. It's great.
It's cold. And I think up here as well, we're spoiled with the fact that you don't have to carry any gear. So in the wet season, I don't carry a sleeping bag because it's too hot for a sleeping bag. I just have a silk liner, but I carry a fly. Don't need jumpers or anything. You don't need clothes because you wash them at the end of the day. You just,
so different.
And the dry season, I don't need a fly. I just need a sleeping bag to keep warm.
It was like one of the things you mentioned about doesn't matter if the sleeping bag gets wet, because in Tassie, if your sleeping bag gets wet, that's like the worst thing that can happen, because that could be life and death type stuff if it gets cold at night. So the approaches are quite considerably different.
What about snakes and the spiders and bitey things? Like if you're just sleeping out without a tarp or anything, how does that go?
Oh, I always sleep with a mozzie net. I get smashed by mosquitoes and bugs. Anything that's in the area will come to me. I'm like a magnet for bugs. So I have to have a fly or a mozzie dome. I very rarely see snakes. Out of all the time up here, I've seen 10 snakes maybe in however many years I've been up here. And the closest call I had with one was probably about 6 to 8 weeks ago. I nearly stood on it. It was a brown snake. You don't want to stand on one of them. We'd stopped to look at some rock art in Kakadu, and I'd sort of just put my bag down and turned around and literally was not even a foot away from standing on it. So that was a bit of a moment.
Yeah, we see a few down here. Just on the rock art and that sort of thing, is there any sort of ethical considerations there with photographing rock art? What are the sort of the ethics and rules with that thing in the Northern Territory?
I'm not allowed, basically. You have to. So if you're photographing rock art for commercial use, you have to have a Indigenous guide with you who can interpret the art. And also you'll find that a lot of rock art is not allowed to be photographed and sort of publicly put out there because it's not supposed to be viewed out of the context in which it is situated. So like on my permit, so I have a permit for all the national parks up here, and with Kakadu I have a 12-month permit, and it's got really strict conditions on it as to what you can and can't photograph, and I'm not allowed to photograph rock art at all for commercial use. So
I remember the same, Louise, when I applied for one up there. Nick, you might be curious about this, but there's this very interesting link to some of the rock art in Ubia, which is just north of Jabiru, and they actually have, I think, a 2,500-year-old thylacine literally on the wall up there, and we're like, how is that even possible, and I don't think they've sort of figured that one out, but I actually saw it myself with my eyes.
I've seen a few thylacines. I have seen so much rock art, and some of it is just amazing. Like it's really incredible to see it. And some of the places that you go, you sort of think, has anyone even seen this? How does anyone even know this is here? Like, because it's just a random rock somewhere. It's got an overhang, and you think, oh, I'll have a look, and there you go. There's so many places in Kakadu where it's everywhere. Like, it's really, really good when you can find some. It's very exciting.
Well, that sounds amazing. I'd love to come up and visit one day and have a look.
Good. Should. Everyone should.
More piggies.
Yes.
This is probably one of the most popular spots that people visit in Kakadu, apart from Yellowwater Billabong. Let me just go back to the map.
It still requires some effort to get to this one.
Yeah, it does, actually. So just to give you an idea of where we are, so Jabiru is like the main town in the middle of Kakadu. The photo we were just at, which is this one here, is... so Norlangi is probably around here. Oh, no, it's not. It's further north than that. Norlangi is about here.
Yep.
And Gabara is very close to that. So I would say that photo was taken up here somewhere.
Okay.
Gunlom, which is this photo here, is down here. So it's mostly... Oh, no, it's not mostly bitumen. It's gravel, but it's two-wheel... Oh, sometimes it's two-wheel drive. It's great.
Yeah, I had that issue when I was down there. I was like, should I, shouldn't I, with my little 2-wheel putt. And at the time, 4 out of the 5 people shook their head and said, probably not a good idea.
Yeah. It's
one of them was like, you're right, mate, no worries. And I was like, oh.
There's always one.
I was like, oh, what should I do? I was like, oh, and I didn't get in there in the end.
You didn't? So it's actually closed at the moment. And I think it'll be closed for quite a while. I don't know whether you guys would have heard on the news down there, but they were building a new stairway access point up to the top. Because for years and years and years, it's just been like a little goat track, and people are sort of injuring themselves when they fall down after sunset. And,
yeah, it's quite famous, that goat track.
Yeah. Anyway, they've redone part of the access to the top with like some nice stairs. I think they've even got lights on the stairs. And they have built it through part of a Aboriginal sacred site. So now they've had to close it all once they sort out this great big mess that has happened. So it's been closed for about 12 months, and it's going to be closed for a long time. So it's sort of, one of those photos that I'm kind of...
Grandma's going to get a rest.
Kind of one of those photos that I'm glad I sort of got before they've closed it off. So I think this is a 10-shot panorama, or maybe 8-shot panorama from memory. So you sort of walk up this hill coming around this side, and then you've got these 3 or 4 different pools at the top which you can swim in and look out sort of over the landscapes. It's like a natural infinity pool.
Yeah, Instagram loves its infinity pools, so I'm not surprised. Yeah,
right at the end in particular, it's super infinity style.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So that's that one. So that was a couple of Kakadu. That's just a couple of my favourite photos, I guess. But like I spend several weeks in Kakadu every year throughout the year, and like there's always something different. Like I go somewhere different every time. Like, and I've been doing that for years. So that's a lot of different places. So when you sort of head south, that's the Kakadu Highway down here. End up at Catherine. So Catherine's down here, and the Gorge. And Nipmuc National Park is just north of Catherine. I think it's probably about half an hour drive maybe from Catherine town itself to get into the national park. So I've got a couple...
The Nipmuc Gorge, that was known as Catherine Gorge, but it's been fully renamed?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
It was Catherine Gorge when I went there 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Last few years it's changed. It's good. They're doing a really good job of management there, actually. They've got a lot of different walking tracks, and they've just opened a really big like mountain bike network and stuff there. Like it's very it's a lot more accessible than a lot of areas of Kakadu are. There's a lot of tracks and a lot of information on what you can do and where you can go. Anyway, this is one of the main lookouts, one of the first lookouts into the gorge. This is the first gorge. The boats are sort of just parked here for the wet season because they don't use so many, but usually they begin from a bit further downstream. And then this is sort of the entrance to the first gorge where you start going through the gorge system. Another rainbow. Apparently I like rainbows.
We all do. Why not?
Actually, I think I've got a third rainbow in here too. Whoops. We don't get them very often, so I have to make most of them when they're here. Yes, this was supposed to be sunset, and it's a fairly big climb to get to this spot, and I nearly didn't go, and I was sort of sitting at my tent in my car and just sort of having a drink and thinking, I don't think it's going to be worth going up there. I don't want to go up there again. I thought, go on, do it. You're here, just go and have a look. And as I'm sort of halfway up the stairs, I noticed this rainbow over the top, and I've never run up those stairs and climbed up that last little bit of rock and quick in my life. So, I think this is another pano. I think this is maybe 10-shot pano.
Yeah.
Trees.
Sorry?
What are those trees on the right-hand side that's standing out there?
These ones? Yeah, they're Liverstoner Palms. They're a type of palm, native.
Gorgeous.
Yeah. Go with this, actually, I think. So with the panoramas, it goes back to a point that someone was saying before about mirrorless cameras. And I think I've always stuck with like the 35mm, the DSLR, because it's much higher megapixel count, because I print big sometimes. So in terms of the mirrorless technology, I think when I was looking last time, you just didn't have the same
the resolution.
Resolution, that's the word.
Meg on the R5, 45 meg on the R5.
Yeah, well now, I think it's a 60 megapixel Sony or something as well.
Should be in sales, Paul.
Oh no, Luke's got the 64 Sony, and I got
61.
the 45 cannon. So
You're breaking out in a sweat there, Paul, from the heat coming off the camera.
Oh, there's another one. I told you they'd have a go.
So yeah,
down in a few months.
I think the native size of this being sort of 10 files stitched together is probably like maybe 1.5 or 2 meters at a native size, which is huge. I did have another Catherine one here, which was, so this one was from last wet season. I think I took this, it must have been this year. So yeah, January this year, I think I took that. And then this one is from dry season. This was from June this year. So this is the 8th gorge. So there's 13 gorges altogether in Catherine. So this is gorge 1. So looking at this gorge 1. And then towards the end, you can see the water levels obviously a lot lower as you go upstream. So this is from the 8th gorge campsite looking back down to the 7th gorge.
So is there a multi-day that takes you sort of along the different gorges?
Yeah, that's the good thing about Catherine. There's actually a few different ways that you can do the gorge. So you can hike across the top, which is what I did on this trip.
Yep.
And to get to the 8th gorge, you really need to have a minimum of 2 days. I think I did this with 3. So I think from memory, it's about 25k. No, it's a bit less than that. Maybe 22k one way. Yeah, I'm guessing about 20k, 22k one way to get to here. You can also kayak, which is probably my favourite way to do it. So where I am here, I'm at the top where I've hiked across the gorge, and the campsite's pretty much behind me. There's another pool behind me. If you kayak up this, you can just see the edge of this sandy beach here. So there's actually a sandy beach down the bottom. So you can camp there if you're coming in from kayak. So kayaking, you're always in the water and next to the water. So in terms of the heat, it's probably the easiest way to do it because you can always just constantly swim. Walking across the escarpment is hot at any time of year. If you're doing it at this time of year, it'd just be insane. Just don't do it. It'd be 45 degrees up there. So even in the dry season, it's probably between 36 and 38, I'd say, on the top of that rock in the middle of the day. Yeah, it's worth it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I guess you have to think about the nice swim in the rock pool at the end.
Right. There's a temperature transition when you come from Darwin too. When you move from Darwin into the Kakadu, it usually rises 3 or 4 degrees. Every time I've done it, it has anyway.
Yeah, so Darwin's always 2 or 3 degrees at least cooler than inland because we've got the sea breeze, so it keeps it cooler from the ocean. As soon as you go an hour or so inland, it's just there's no breeze and it's just hot. It's just stifling.
So can you hire a kayak if you're a visitor, or do you need to bring your own?
Cool.
Yeah, they don't seem to really like you bringing your own so much. Logistically, it's a bit difficult, I think, because so you can't kayak in the first gorge where this photo is. So basically, you have to get on one of these boats and go through the first gorge. There's then like a big rock bar that you walk over, and that's where you pick your kayak from. Pick up your kayak from.
Why is that, Louise?
Crocodiles. So there's another creek.
There's my bag because I remember paddling that first section.
Well, they've just changed it. You used to be able to do it about 4 or 5 years ago. They changed it because crocodiles are getting more and more widespread, and they're getting further and further inland and in places where they never had them before. So for safety sort of reasons, they've stopped kayaking now in the first gorge because there's another inlet, another creek that comes in, and they can't control what comes through that creek. So
I went up with these crazy characters, just answered like an ad in a paper in an outdoor store in Brisbane or something, and we ended up here a week later, and they knew we were from New Zealand, didn't know anything about crocodiles, and they're like, oh, here's a nice camping spot down here by the water. Oh yeah, no worries. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night and sort of hearing all this splashing. What's all that splashing sound? There must be some big fish out there or something. And I opened the tent and I pointed my torch out, and there was like 11 pairs of eyes staring back at me. And I just said, honey, just quietly open the back of the tent. We're going to go sleep in the car. And we just crapped out the back super quietly because it was not very far away. That was my first introduction to crocs.
So saltwater crocodiles that far inland, is that what you're saying?
Oh yeah, they come a long way inland.
Yeah. And they don't have to be in saltwater. They like fresh water too. So just because they're called saltwater crocodiles, they're in fresh. And when I camped at the bottom on this beach here in the 8th Gorge, got the torch around at night and sort of see what we could see, and saw many pairs of eyes staring back. But they're fresh kids, they're fun. They're friendly.
So, yeah, right. So they're coming in through the Daly River and then into the Catherine River. Is that just looking at the map?
Yeah.
Oh, build a wall, I reckon.
Oh, you've been listening to too many Trump speeches, mate.
Oh dear. Well, make the Crocs pay for it.
No, we don't have crocodiles here.
It takes a while to get used to them. You kind of don't even think about it when you live here and you understand where they are. But like, I'm terrified of sharks. Like, you wouldn't get me going in the water down your way, but people do. I think you just have to know your environment and understand what the risk is.
I often find that too, because you hear the Americans always say how, in Australia everything's trying to kill you, but they have like bears and anything that can just come out of the. They can come out any time. They never
rattlesnakes.
Yeah.
I get asked that a lot, actually, because I go away by myself quite a bit. A lot of people who come into the my stalls and have a chat, they're like, "Well, aren't you scared? Like, don't you get scared when you're out by yourself?" And like, I never am. The only time that I'm ever scared is if I'm somewhere sort of by the road where I know that people can access and another car pulls up with other people in it while I'm by myself. That's when I get scared. If I'm like out bush and I'm in the middle of nowhere, like, nothing can get me. We don't have any predators here that want to chase me and want to eat me like bears. Like, spiders and snakes all want to go the opposite way. Dingoes, sometimes they're a bit curious, but generally they run the other way as well. I find it very strange how people think that it's something to be scared of. I can understand why people would be, but for me it's just second nature. Like, I don't even think about it.
It's just because all the stories we hear are tourists getting kidnapped and murdered, or being taken by a crocodile, or that sort of thing. It's all that comes down this way from the Northern Territory, and then
everyone wants a good croc story. Isn't that what the NT Times is for, or whatever it's called?
NT News. It's
NT News.
Yeah. We haven't. I don't think we've had one really for the last 12 months or so. We usually have an average of probably, I'd say one croc death, but one person related death by crocodile a year. We had one year, I remember, when I hadn't been here that long, and there was 3 or 4 in the space of 3 months, which was a bit shocking. But
well, that's a good thing. At least I guess everybody's not going out as much anymore, so those sort of things might trail off a bit. Oh dear.
Well, pickies.
Yeah.
All right. I've got to do one more rainbow. Sorry.
Oh wow, you really are on a rainbow streak.
Yeah, I didn't realise I put so many rainbow ones in here. Sorry.
No, don't apologise.
I've been craving wet season skies. I'm missing them. I'm ready for them. So this is one of the Litchfield waterfalls. So this is Tolma Falls, which is probably one of the lesser visited of the main waterfalls. And the main reason for that is because you can't swim there. So not that many people tend to go in there because it's just a lookout. So I'm standing on the lookout here. And yeah, you can do a little walk around the back here, which is really nice, but still no swimming along there. And yeah, it's just one of those spots that's got really dramatic sort of escarpment country, lots of rock, really nice native trees in that area as well that I love. But yeah, it's just, I think, set off by the rainbow and the view at sunset.
Such good light.
Yeah, I stood here actually because there's another lookout. There's 2 lookouts in the same spot. One sort of looks over the open plains and the open land that's behind me, and then the other one looks over this waterfall. And I sat here. One of them's got a cover over it, so I was sat there for probably 4 or 5 hours watching storms go around me. So I did actually, I don't know why I didn't put it in the same set. I've got a photo from a slightly different angle of this bit of rock. Just pointed again, you can't see that. This bit of rock here with a couple of lightning strikes behind it, and then sat it out for another couple of hours and managed to get the rainbow. So I think, yeah, paid off.
Sometimes that's what it takes, isn't it? You just have to be patient. And these days, there's not, I guess I'm guilty of it too. Like, you just sort of rock up and whatever conditions happen to be there when you're there is what you end up photographing. And, it's... Yeah. But I guess, if you have the patience, you get the rewards.
I'm not very good at sitting in one spot for a very long time. So a lot of people come to me and say, oh, you must be really patient. I'm the most impatient person that you will ever meet. I just tend to go back a lot. So I pick my spot, I suss out when I think would be the best time, and then I suss out my angles and all that sort of stuff, and then I go back, and then I just go back over and over again to just try and get what I want, I guess. So this is a place that I tried to get a photo that I was happy with for years, and I could never get it, and then it sort of all came to fruition, I guess, on this day. This was March 2018, I think, this one.
Cool. That must have been a good feeling when you get that.
Yeah, Litchfield, in terms of visitors and tourists that come here, it's the place that people, like, everyone loves Litchfield. You do hear from Kakadu. A lot of people are not as impressed with Kakadu, mainly down to the access issues, I think, but Litchfield is very accessible, so everyone that you speak to loves Litchfield. So when you can get an iconic, or, you know, a spectacular photo of an iconic location that then people also love, that's the three I always want.
Awesome.
Just go. Okay, I've got one more, and then I'm gonna skip to the next bit because I'm talking too much. So this is Berry Springs, which is on the way to Litchfield. It's probably only about 45 minutes to an hour from Darwin. This is one place that you won't get me swimming. So it's open for swimming, and you can swim here. It's a designated swimming area, but behind this area is a crocodile farm, which I'm not really down with, because every now and again crocodiles escape. And off downstream, you've got sort of 3 or 4 pools that you can swim in, and then you're just in the creek, and they get crocodiles that come up from the bottom end. So I'm just like, no, I can't get in there. It's not my favourite swimming spot. But it's a nice photo.
Understandable.
It's closed now, actually, I think. So they close this towards the end of the dry season, usually because of that crocodile risk. Water levels get too low.
So they can move further upstream because the water levels are lower. Is that
yeah. Oh, no. So, sorry. They've closed it now because the water levels are too low, and I think that's more so for the bacteria. Where they've
okay, yeah. It's not...
And then as water levels get higher then, so with the wet season coming in...
more flow through on it, yeah. And that's Pandanus there too, isn't it, on the right there?
This is, yes.
Yeah, it's quite a feature of around the top end.
Yeah, it is. Got a couple of different types. This one's the one that always grows around water. But there's a really nice Pandanus. I have got photos of it, but not in this collection. There's a type of Pandanus that only grows in Stone Country in Kakadu. And it's very similar leaves, but the trunks are just a slightly different shape, almost like tridents, sort of more so forked. And I love that Pandanus. And that
we have Pandani down here, and a lot of people get Pandanus and Pandani confused, but they're actually, like, I think they're pretty much completely different. So it's quite interesting. Yeah,
you can see them in my background.
Oh, that's it. Yeah.
Pandani, they're very tropical looking for a subalpine plant.
Yeah. I actually just wanted to, as well, whilst we're talking about plants and the different sort of environments and stuff that we have up here. If you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you would have seen me.
Which I recommend everybody.
Yeah. You might have seen me rambling and trying to promote my new book that's just come out. And basically everything that I've just talked about, all these different areas on that map around Kakadu and Catherine and Litchfield, that's everywhere that I go through in the book. It's 250 pages. I have got one here. Just got it. Ta-da!
Oh, wow.
Oh, hang on. Where have I gone?
No, the background.
Oh, it's not going to like it.
Yeah. Do you have a picture of the cover that you could bring up on the screen?
Maybe. I'll just see if I can find one.
Oh, no, that's all right.
Anyway, basically, it goes through that same area, but goes through heaps more detail in terms of climate and storms and all the different habitats that we have up here, as well as when to go to different places in terms of the seasons, whether it's sunrise or sunset that's better, and how you have to get there, and, you know, all the different obstacles that you might come across.
Wow.
So it's
like a guide almost.
It is a guide, like it's a souvenir sort of book, a coffee table book of photography. Like, I love the top end, and I love Darwin, and I love how unique this environment is up here, and I really want to share that with everyone else. So it's sort of a chance for me to not only just put nice photos in a book that I think people are going to enjoy, but a way to share, not just for photographers either, for other just visitors and just tourists, share where to go and what people can find and what they should look for. Because when you're visiting a new place, whether that be Australia or overseas, like you don't know that environment. So I just want to give little bits of information to people as to what they can find and what they should look for, and if they see something, that they can then sort of identify what it is
Awesome.
through the book. And then obviously it's got sort of tips in there for photographers in terms of sunset and sunrise and information on tides and all that sort of stuff for Darwin stuff. So I just wanted to put that out there because it
sounds like a must-have for any photographers, especially that's heading up that way, and to know the lay of the land and things like that.
I hope so.
What sort of print run have you done, Louise? With that?
So I've got 1,000 initially, but I've already committed to another 1,000. So basically 2,000 over 2 years. This is my third book. So my second book was called The Magic at the Top End. This one's called The Wonder of Nature's Way. So similar sort of theme. The Magic at the Top Ends, that was my second book, and I think I sold about 3,000 of those since 2016. So that's, but I sold out 6 months ago, so probably 3 years or so. It's not it's hard putting them together. Like, it's so much work, and I forget every time that I start doing a book how much work it is, and I always get completely sort of bamboozled as to where to start. But once you get a finished product and you actually get a final thing in your hands, it's all sort of worthwhile. So I'm very happy with how it's come out.
Fantastic.
Cool. How can we get a hold of a copy of that if we wanted one and we didn't live within 50 kilometres of you?
Yeah, so if you do live within 50 kilometres with me, I can drop one off to you. That's no problem. But if you don't, they're on my website, which is www.louisedenton.com. And it's on the homepage. Like, it's within other categories, but it's right on the homepage of my website. You can't miss it. So they're all on there. I think there's some more photos on there of different pages and stuff. And I've got heaps on Instagram as well. I think I just put in my story today, like a sneak peek of flicking through different pages. So
cool.
If you like me on Instagram today, you'll get that story within the next, 12 hours or so it's got left.
Fantastic. No, thanks for telling us about that. And I'm always highly respectful of people that go to the effort of putting a book together, because it's always quite a commitment to put something like that out there and putting all your hard-earned work in a sort of physical format that people can really enjoy like that. So must be very rewarding. Yeah,
it is. I think so. Any photographer that I see and I see that I have a book, I get it. Like, I'm a book person. I love books. So, and it's just always nice to see your stuff in print, finished off.
Brilliant.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody else have any questions about like the actual top end area in terms of locations or anything, or was that?
What's the definition of top end? Like, where is that?
Basically between Darwin and Catherine is that region. I would say down as far as Madaraka.
With the Arnhem Land as the border?
Sorry?
With Arnhem Land as the eastern border?
Yes and no. So yes. It's just, for me, I don't count it so much in that top end region because the access issues are so difficult. It's such a different region to get to, and it is quite different in terms of the habitat as well. Like, it's similar to Kakadu, but it's on its own plateau. Like, it's got endemic species there, and it's just a whole different ball game. So I don't really. So
I meant, like, as in not including Arnhem Land is my point. As in,
so I would not include
Arnhem Land was the edge of.
Yeah, I would not include it. Technically, it is part of that same, latitude, longitude. It's that same area. But
I spent quite a lot of time with that crossing into Arnhem Land. It's quite a fascinating.
Oh, that one was it? When I was there last year, someone there was all these crocs lined up against the river, and someone broke down while they were crossing it, and they were in the middle of the river with all the water under the car, and all these crocs, like they were trying to. They got the car started again, but it was, it was funny but not funny because
every year someone goes off that crossing. So people always try and cross it when it's too fast and it's too high.
Cahill's crossing, isn't it? Something like
that.
I think twice I've been there. I've seen cars like roll down the river, like literally in the river upside down.
Yeah, it's notorious.
Is that East Alligator River? Is it?
It is. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the, I think the Mary River is the most populated river in Australia for crocodiles, but the East Alligator wouldn't be far behind.
Oh yeah, we did a trip up the river, and it was there was a lot of crocs there.
A lot of big crocodiles, like
They're
huge.
massive.
Yeah, massive. So that's basically, I suppose, the whole area that I cover in terms of the images that I sell. I did want to talk a little tiny bit. I haven't got that long, but I did want to take some time to have a chat about the business side of things.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Oh no, we've got a few minutes.
Yeah, I'll be quick then, hey.
No, that's all right.
Because if anybody has seen me at the markets or at pop-ups or whatever around Darwin, I run a photography business where I sell prints and I sell books, as you've seen. I sell calendars. A lot of people don't realise that I actually make 100% of my own product. Sorry.
Yeah, that's sort of it'd be nicer to talk. Yeah,
do that
without being a little box. Yeah.
No, I lost where I was going. So I make like all of my own products. So I do all my own framing. I cut all my own mats. I do absolutely everything. I package all my orders and ship them out. So in terms of the business side of things, that takes up like easily 40 hours a week. Then I have to factor in obviously running all the shops and the pop-ups and the markets and all that sort of stuff. So in terms of the photography side of things, like it's so difficult sometimes to actually fit that in. Like a lot of people come to me at the markets and the pop-ups and they idolize like what I do, and don't get me wrong, like I love it, like we all love photography, but I think it's very easy sometimes as well to lose perspective that like they just see that I skip around all the time taking photos, which I do more than the average person, but it's a full-time job just managing the business, let alone running the retail side of things and then actually trying to take photos. So I just wanted to sort of I suppose just share a bit about my business and how it works for other people that want to do the same thing and how it might work for them, because everyone's different in how we all run our businesses. Because like you guys are full-time.
Yeah.
You don't work the same way I do in terms of selling prints and like.
I have a lot of respect for the way that you do things. In terms of focusing more on the retail side of things, and my and Paul's probably as well strategies more. I do a lot of more social media work and also commission type work and commercial work where I'm just delivering to a client. So and then the odd print sale here and there. Whereas for you, it's very much more. The selling game, I suppose, and being out there and being in front of people and having that presence.
Yeah, I would say that my business is maybe only 2% of what you do. Then I'd say 90% of my income is selling prints. It's difficult. I'm at the point now where I've been doing this for so long that I have become so distracted, I guess, by the day-to-day of just getting things done, that the business sort of hasn't grown. And in terms of doing new work, it's taken a back burner when it shouldn't have. So this year, thanks COVID, was supposed to be my year with the new gallery and outsourcing a lot of that stuff, so I don't have to be making all the products and getting orders and stuff out. I can get back to taking photos. So I haven't got time to talk about it now. Maybe I'll do something on Instagram or Facebook later, maybe. I had a lot of new images that I wanted to share.
Oh, no.
I know, I'm just running out of time.
We could go a little bit longer. I don't think it's of mine.
Just in terms of...
there's already been some of the audience buying your books while you've been listening, so that's good.
Oh, yay! I did just see my phone flash out the corner of my eyes. I want that notification. Thank you.
There's a question there too from Tim Lashbrook asking how much of your business comes via your website as a percentage.
Yeah, that's a common question because I think everyone presumes that everything is done online now, but I have not found that at all. So this year's been a little bit different. So I think if we go before this year, I would say only between 2 and 5% of my sales were online sales.
That's not very much.
No, not when you're trying to make a full-time sort of income. If I was just relying on the website, I wouldn't be able to be full-time. Yeah. This year I've changed a little bit because of COVID. I have put a lot more effort into my website, heaps more effort into Instagram. Like I've probably only really been using Instagram over the last 6 months, but it's been a really good marketing putting the word out there. It's been a really good tool, I suppose, for business. So now I have managed to up that. I would probably say that now, I'd say that my online sales, if I compare it to the 12-month period from last year, they're up, I would say, by 500%. So I would say that now I'm probably, maybe online sales are maybe 30% or 40% of my income this year. But I've dropped income, obviously, with the lack of events and the lack of markets.
So you've had to almost like pivot to be able to move that way. A lot of people have gone online with a lot of things because of it.
Yes. But I think that I would I would not have been able to have that increase in online sales if I hadn't have got the base from the in-person presence. So that online sales, yes, I put a lot of effort into it, but it wouldn't have come if I hadn't have done the 5 years or 10 years and however long of background work, I guess.
All right. That's interesting. And do you have a chance to show us a few of those new shots, just quickly?
I'll put a couple up. So basically, what I wanted to talk about was just in terms of running the business side of things. It's hang on, I have to share screen again. Does that mean you can do that?
Oh no, I just overrode it that one time. Just to...
Oh, you did. Okay.
Yeah. You're the boss, Louise.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, with the sort of the business side of things, and getting to that point where it just felt like I was just doing the day-to-day, I sort of wanted to create some different stuff, like just do something different. So I have been working on, let's do these ones first because these ones are in the book. So basically just working on like a series of images that are different to my normal stuff in that, they're just different. I think they're different. I don't know how I'm going to explain this, to be honest, but...
We'll see.
Hang on. I don't know how to make... Why aren't you in the corner anymore?
You have to share the screen again.
Oh, yeah, just the green button, share screen, and then should just come up with the...
Desktop, there we go. All right.
Ah, sweet.
Okay, sorry.
Right.
These are just different some of these other ones. Get rid of that. This first one that's here... Oh, actually, that's the same spot as this one.
Yeah, I thought so.
This bit of rock here
Ah.
is... Where'd it go? That bit of rock there.
Wow.
So that's Catherine Gorge. That's in my book. Just different colour palette, I guess, to what I would normally use. And I'm really loving... Yeah, it is. I tend to go more pastel, softer colours.
Yeah.
This is a bit more punchy, I guess. And I've also gone towards the square format a lot. I don't know why. I'm just really liking square at the moment. I think partly because of the 11 to 24 where I'm now stitching or, composing images from a foreground and a sky. So I think that's lending more to square because it means I can get more sky in, basically. So yeah, that's a Catherine Gorge one. I might do this. Oh, which one? This is a Kakadu one.
Oh, wow.
So that's an aerial shot that I did on a flight to Jim Jim Falls in the wet season 2018, I think. So this bit of rock here from the other angle is quite a famous bit of rock. It's where the Lightning Man's said to live or come from. But this is sort of typical wet season landscape, I think, to me, in terms of Kakadu. Like obviously you've got the rain here and the dark sky, and then the cliffs and the Arnhem Land sort of escarpment is just that iconic Kakadu symbol. And there's a sneaky little waterfall in here, which obviously you wouldn't see if that was dry season. That's literally just water running off the escarpment into a waterfall, creek flowing, and then the green rather than the brown. So this to me is just a wet season, I think just wet season in a photo. It's an aerial shot. This is the Jim Jim Falls photo that I got from that flight. So this doesn't flow in the dry season, which a lot of tourists are very disappointed with. It's still really, really nice to swim at the bottom when it's not flowing like this. But yeah, you wouldn't get in there when it's flowing like this with the amount of spray and
definitely
water.
on my bucket list to get an aerial of it in flow for sure.
You've got to pick your timing. Like it runs off so quickly. You can have a few days of rain and you think, yeah, it's going to be it, and you can get there, it's all gone. It's like, you've really got to pick it.
Can you get down to the base there? Is that a beach down there?
That is a beach. So in the dry season, you can get down there, but it is four-wheel drive only. So it's about, they say allow 2 hours one way from the main bitumen, and it's probably an hour and a half of just graded gravel road, so quite good condition gravel road, depending on when you go. Sometimes it gets really corrugated, but generally it's quite flat. And then the last 10 Ks or so were more four-wheel driving.
Gets a bit sandy, but we went in there. I must be over 20 years ago now, in the family trip, and
they've put a heap of rocks in there now.
Oh, okay, yeah.
They've dumped so much, like loads of rocks in there, so it's now not sandy at all.
Okay.
Twin Falls, which is the other one on the same road, that's very sandy. But yeah, this is Jim Jim, and it's nice in the dry season when you get there, because this pool down the bottom, it's always in shade, so it's always really cool.
Yeah.
And it's deep, it's really, really deep. And then, yeah, it's got this nice beach to relax on.
How tall is that waterfall?
About 200 metres.
Yeah,
It's a big
when you're down the bottom,
Oh, yeah.
it's a long way up.
Yes,
It's been dry every time I've been up there, so I haven't actually seen it in person. But
I've only seen it, so when you access it by road and you walk in the bottom, I've only seen it flowing once. And that was like the first weekend it opened one year. I was like, right, I'm going. I'm getting in there. And yeah, nowhere near as much as that, but it's just sort of had a trickle down it. But
Looks like it's a sort of waterfall. It'd be hard to shoot if you were down the bottom. It'd be that much spray around. It'd be hard to.
Oh yeah, you can't get there. I've got a friend who was there at the campground after the first rains of the season, and he did the drive into the falls to see if you could get close. And he said you could just hear the roar of the water, like you couldn't get anywhere near it. Like, just crazy.
Wow.
Cool to see from the bottom, but.
Oh.
Are there some good lookout points on that escarpment, or do you, to see this view, you really have to fly in, do you? Or?
You'd probably have to fly in. So you can do a hike up to the top. And I've got a couple of shots on the top where I've done bushwalks, where I've gone further upstream and camped up there. It's not an easy walk to get to the top. A lot of people don't go up there. I'd say it's probably only maybe 8K up there, like to get to the top. But because of how rugged the terrain is, you have to sort of do a big walk around loop. You can't sort of just walk straight up a set of stairs. It's, you've got to walk around the terrain. So it takes a few hours to get up there. It's very dramatic country, that whole area.
there's quite a few scenic flights that run out that way, Nick.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I fly there, it's been so dry. I ended up that I didn't go down there because there's going to be no water anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a shame to burn all that money getting down there and then not have a shot of it.
Yeah, I went north. I was a little bit sneaky. I just chucked it in the chat. I just north of here, following the East Alligator that we're talking about, and the South Alligator. That's a phenomenal place to do aerial photography. So I just snuck in a gallery in the chat there, and I thought you might appreciate that too, Louise. Actually, just to see. That's some of my older work. That you've seen some of my newer work from the Tiwis, but this is actually from my first trip up there.
Oh yeah, okay. I have got some aerial photos of the East Alligator. I'm gonna show you in a second.
Oh, cool.
Oh.
Not on this batch. I'll get them in a second. I just got one more, which is in the book as well. So this is probably one of my favourite coastal images at the moment.
Square, Louise. Loving the square.
Yeah, I don't know what it is at the moment. I just really liking square format.
Maybe it's because you've got into Instagram. You're back into Insta, and now it's like the square thing. And
no, it's not.
I've got some square artwork. I've got some photography on my walls, which is square. So I think that's why I just see how it sits in my space, and I see it as prints rather than on the screen.
I really do love square as well, and they're very. They can use them in a lot of places as well in terms of topping, and they work really well.
While we're just talking about the East Alligator, I'll just bring up those couple of the floodplains if I can find them. I'm pretty sure I put them in here. I've only got one. I'm going to show you the one. I'm glad I did JPEGs and not PSD files.
Oh yeah, no, that spot.
I've got a few from that, and there's a couple in the book, but this is one of my favourite ones, I think, just for the amount of different colour that's in there. Sort of the blue and the shadows, and the red and the orange over here, and then the green. It just was all the colours. It just
What time of year was this, Louise?
This was about this time last year, and I was heading up to the East Alligator mouth. I wanted to get some coastal shots.
Yeah.
The bushfire smoke was just ridiculous, and we sort of got halfway there, which was like an hour flight from Jabiru in a helicopter. Got halfway there, and we were like, there's no point in going up there. Like, the visibility is just terrible. So we just sort of went around a bit further inland. I'd say this is probably maybe 20 minutes to 30 minutes flight time from Jabiru. 20 minutes. Really nice up there though. But again, that's a bit difficult because you have to pick your tides up there as well as your time of day.
You do.
They're big tides too, aren't they? That are
huge tides.
Every time I tried to fly, and I've done it a few times, it's been dodging fires. And is there actually a clear area past that area you can see up ahead? And I've actually managed to get lucky, and I've made it to the coastline, and I made it all the way up to Injilgut last time.
Yeah.
Off the west Arnhem Land sort of coastline as well, that's another place I highly recommend having a look.
I've got a question for you actually. How does it go with permits in terms of the commercial side of things for that? You have to go through the NLC?
To be perfectly honest, with the first trip I did get all permitted, and that wasn't too hard. But I had a friend who was working there as a ranger, and the second trip was I didn't have any commercial outcome for it, and I don't think we actually published anything from it. But I was with a client, and she was doing personal work, and I was kind of like guiding some people around the area who just wanted to see it. So I didn't go down the same channels, but Arnhem Land's a bit different, isn't it? Like the pilots were a little bit unsure as well, even about position, because we mainly flew over the water rather than over the land. So
with Arnhem Land, I've found any permits that I have had for there, they have to see every image you plan to use. So basically, you apply for the permit and say, this is what I'm going to be doing. Here's my insurance. And then these are my plans. And then afterwards, when you get back, before you publish any of the images, you have to then share them. Just check.
Sounds very similar to Uluru.
Interesting.
Very regulated, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
I think it's just the traditional owners are very protective, I guess, of their sacred places, and so just making sure that you're not reproducing those en masse when it's something very significant for them. So it's all about
viewing out of context, I think. So if you take a photograph of a sacred site and it shows a sacred site, but you're not at that sacred site or at that area to view it, it can't be viewed out of context. Is one of the, especially with Uluru as well. That was the issue with that. But yeah, it's easy. It's just the process you've got to go through, and sometimes you get images rejected, but usually it's fine as long as you follow the rules and do the right thing.
Yeah, if you know what the guidelines are, similar to Uluru, like they're very clear on what areas are good and what aren't, and so.
And again, it's commercial versus recreational, I guess.
Correct.
There.
Yeah.
If you're planning on producing a book on it, it's one thing to, as opposed to going up for an incredible experience just to interact with an incredible landscape.
Yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Don't have that problem down here.
Not at all.
No, we don't really.
No.
So yeah.
Well, there's some conjecture over some of the places that have significance and some of the rock art as well, but that's such a small percentage of the landmass that we have quite free access to, really.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, and that's exciting to see that. That's a stunning shot.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's where I was going with that. So yeah, basically I've got a heap of different images and different themes going in my head and in my collections at the moment, in a way to try and get inspired and get new ideas and different ideas. I'm just working around some different themes, just going forward, so I can sort of stay focused on different things and get new ideas and stuff. So that was
definitely worth getting to the coastline at some stage, Louise. I highly recommend it. Yeah, the mouth of those rivers, both the South and the East Alligator, are absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
And the coastline in between as well, actually, to be honest.
I think most people probably see, if you're on Instagram, you'll have seen this one before. This was inspired by another photographer that was on, that I saw, did work on Velvia film, and it just, I don't know, this image was just inspired by that. So yeah,
it's a martyr's cloud almost.
Yeah, I don't know. I really like that. But I'm just working on a heap of different themes, which I'll have to share later on in Facebook or Instagram or something, and go through all the different photos that I've got, different ideas. Yeah,
well, probably on that note, we probably will have to wrap things up and let everybody get on with their evenings. And I know it's a lot earlier in the evening for you over there, Louise, but thank you so much for joining us. And certainly if everyone wants to follow you. Louise Denton Photography on Instagram, isn't it, your handle? And then louisedenton.com online. And you've also got a great Facebook page as well, which I think is Louise Denton Photography as well. So it's not too hard to find you. And so wish you all the best with navigating the new world order, I suppose, and changes to the way you operate up that way. And hopefully can catch up in the future when I go on a trip up there, and it would be pretty awesome.
Our borders are open.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's a point. Like, I don't know what it is about the top end, but once you've experienced it, it's like nothing else. It just stays in your blood. It stays in your soul. It affects you in ways you don't expect. It's a really incredible place, and it's not necessarily an easy, light, fluffy place to go, but I think it's part of what stays with you. You know, you go through a level of physicality being up there, depending on the season, and there's a level of wildness. And like I said, there's this energy in the air all the time, whether it's around storms or wildlife or just pure like vivaciousness of the the temperature and the plant life and the insects, and it's just so freaking alive. And,
it is.
Yeah, like I think everyone in Australia should get themselves up there at some stage to really feel like they've seen and experienced one of the most incredible places in this land, for sure.
Yeah, and it is really dramatically different to what you may have experienced of Australia before. It's always refreshing to see a place that's still Australia, but it's definitely just a very different environment. And we really appreciate you sharing that with us.
And I just want to say one more thing, sorry, and then this is it, I promise. If you do ever want any information on places to go, if you're coming to Darwin and you want to plan a trip or you've got questions, like just flick me a message on Instagram or Facebook, or email, and or through my website. If people are coming to Darwin, I love Darwin, and I'm happy to share any information if you've got specific questions.
And do you do any like private workshops or anything like that as well? I
used to, and it's something I really, really, really want to get back into, but just with the whole business manufacturing side of things, I don't have the time. So at some point in the future, yes. So,
awesome. You might need to get a Santa off, Louise.
All right. Well, thanks so much again. Next week we're going to be having a special episode. It's going to have quite a few guys joining us. Will Patino, Adam Williams, and Ricardo De Cuna, and we're actually going to be talking about mental health and photography, and that's going to be a really insightful episode, and also talking about maybe some of the less talked about things, but also should be really beneficial to people that have gone through their own times or are just looking to understand things a little bit more. So.
It should be a really powerful show, everyone. Like, I think as creative artists, we all have a certain sensitivity and a certain sort of up and down that goes on just by being who we are. And Adam and Rick and Will have all been people individually who have had the courage and vulnerability to share some of their challenges around mental health and well-being. And Luke and myself also have been fairly open about some of ours. And we decided that even though it's a photographic platform, that's such a big part of our lives, and we decided to get a panel together quite thoughtfully about who we chose to engage. And between all of us, it's probably going to be a really amazing show, and it's been a while since we had a panel as well. So I'm personally really looking forward to this one, and it's probably going to be one of our more amazing shows, I reckon, in terms of the kind of issues you don't normally get to address or have so easily out in the open, and yet it can be so empowering and healing to get it all out there. So if you're drawn to that one, then I'm personally going to spread the word a bit earlier and a bit wider on this one, because I think a lot of people might get a lot out of this. All right, Louise, you're awesome. And next time I'll go from the other side of the store to the front of the store and actually talk to you.
Yeah, do it.
You weren't so popular.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, and we'll see you again next week, everybody. Enjoy your evening.